Alrighty, hello gang, and welcome to another episode of Apples and Oranges. Now, first off, if you haven't noticed by the title of this, this is not going to be as whimsical and, it's not going to be whimsical at all. And it's not going to be, comedic and all of that stuff. This is serious business tonight because we're going to be discussing the tragedy that befell the Twilight Zone movie back in 1982 during the John Landis segment, in which three people lost their lives: actor Vic Morrow and two young children. Um, I'm hoping that some more people want to come on with me and Chris. I know Chris is waiting in the wings. So if anybody wants to come on, please let me know. If you're my friend on Facebook, I will. And we may have a storm too. If you can hear that thunder in the background, hopefully it will not cause any major problems with the stream tonight. But as I was saying, if you're my friend on Facebook and you let me know that you would like to join in live on the stream, I will be glad to send the link to you if need be. And I will do this for people that I know. I will put the link in the main chat. Sorry, I got distracted a little bit. Batman, you say you feel like such a dumbass for asking what the Twilight Zone tragedy was. No, don't feel like a dumbass. I mean, I'm sure there are more people that are not aware of this. I'll be glad to repeat that tragedy in a nutshell. Um, when Twilight Zone the movie was being made, um, there were a few different segments. Director John Landis directed one of the segments. And during the filming of that particular segment, there was a horrifying accident that took the lives of uh, actor Vic Morrow and two young children. I think the children were like 6 and 7 or something like that. Very, very young children. And there's been a lot of controversy surrounding that tragedy. But the actual trial, and we're going to get into the trial too, the actual trial where John Landis and four other people involved with that segment of the movie were put on trial for involuntary manslaughter. Um, so it is my understanding that this was the first time in Hollywood that this had ever happened, where people that were making a movie were put on trial. And there had been accidents on films before and since that time period. And people don't always come out unscathed from these things. There was a helicopter accident, and actually, a helicopter is what caused this tragedy. There was a helicopter accident on the set of Airwolf, for anybody that remembers that television show. And there was a stuntman that was killed. And I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe that stuntman worked on The Burning with Tom Savini. And he was a young man. Not as young as these young 6 and 7 year olds that were in Twilight Zone the movie. But he was a young man. He was probably in his 20s, maybe mid to late 20s. But I mean, you say it didn't dawn on me until last night or so ago. And Blizzle says she didn't know either, and she said to don't feel bad. No, if you don't know about this case, uh, never fear. We're probably going to talk about it enough tonight that you'll be well versed in it by the time we get done. Now, whether or not people want to carry the remnants of that accident with them for very long, I would say you probably don't. As I said earlier when I did the video on the ground rules, I've seen that footage several times. And although you don't see the bodies, just watching that is enough to give you cold chills up and down your spine. It's just very, very unsettling. Very unsettling. And you know that it did not end well for the people that were below that helicopter. So, Blissful, you say I'll be between chats. One of my friends is live as well. That's fine, Blissful. I understand. People like to multitask, or they need to multitask. Um, and hey, Candace, I didn't want to miss saying hello to you, saying hello to you as well. Um, and sorry again that I seem a little out of it. I'm going through one of those spells where I'm just extremely wiped out. So I may be, I may seem like I'm a little, I guess, swimmy headed and stuff like that. I tried to take a nap before I got on here, but I don't know if it worked well enough to bring me out of that. Liz, will you say it will be a while? Musicians and live don't mix. So, before I get Chris on here, I just want to go over the brief ground rules again. But I also want to remind you that tomorrow night I will be doing another Seductive Poison triple threat review show. And it's pouring down rain currently. I can hear the rain now. I will be talking about Bubba Hotep and Bug from 1975, and The Burning, which I actually mentioned earlier. Friday will be another Terror Time Tea and an all new Friday Foolish. So on Terror Time Tea, I'll be talking about a couple of movies. Uh, Horror House on Highway 5. I can see Chris shaking his head back there. And Humanoids from the Deep. So we're going to be talking about all of that. And then me and Candace at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, we will be talking about badass women in film, not just in horror films, but in all genres of film. Well, actually, Candace, it's not a shower here. It's a full blown washout. I can hear back in this back room, I can hear the rain just pouring. So as long as nothing messes with the computer or the internet, I'll be good. But if something does happen and I lose power or something like that, or lose internet, we certainly can reschedule this for another time. So hopefully that won't happen. But let's get to the ground rules though, real quickly. For those of you that didn't watch my frequently asked questions video from earlier today, we are going to be using the talking stick tonight. Okay. And if it's just me and Chris, then it won't be a big deal at all, I don't think. But if we have more people on here with us at any point in time, then the talking stick will really come in handy. And here is the lovely talking stick. So when the talking stick is on the screen, whoever's turn it is to talk will be able to talk and finish their thoughts before anybody else starts talking. So when the talking stick is on the screen, only one person should be talking. That's part of the rules, and to keep there from being chaos and all that good stuff. Okay. So if somebody is saying something and you want to respond to that, I ask that you wait for that person to finish before I say, okay, does anybody want to respond? And then if there are multiple people that want to respond, we will go one at a time and let each person respond. However, we can't keep going back and forth on the same thing forever and ever and ever, or we'll be here till next Wednesday talking about this. So try to keep your responses to somebody short and sweet and to the point and respectful and all that. Okay. So I'm going to temporarily take the talking stick off there, but I just wanted to show y'all that. Also, this will be a stream where there's a one warning rule. So if you're on here on the stream and you are disrespectful to someone else on the stream, I will give you one warning, and that will be your only warning. If you do that again, I will ask that you leave the stream. And you can go into the chat as long as you can behave yourself in the chat. If you refuse to leave the stream, I will force you out of the stream. Okay. And if you cause trouble in the chat, you will then be kicked out and you will not return in any way, shape, or form for the rest of the stream. Now, I know that sounds harsh, but I just want to make it known that we want to be respectful of everyone else, regardless of their opinion or opinions on this topic. Okay. So, with all that being said, um, Candace, you say you really like the idea. Well, thank you, Candace. I appreciate that. Uh, whatever we've got is probably headed this way. Probably is. More than likely, y'all will be getting some pouring rain a little later, probably. I'm laying down the law, Candace. Well, I'm just trying to keep us civil here tonight because we've got 11 people in here now. Only a few of us are chatting. I haven't had anybody else tell me that they want to come in live on the stream, but there's still time. There's still time. So I'm going to go ahead and add Chris to the stream here. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Dana.
So you ready to get into this? Get into the
Oh, absolutely. I'm more than ready. I actually sit down today and I kind of prepared, myself for what I wanted to say because I wanted to give my 100% complete, honest, opinion on this, and I didn't want to forget anything. I didn't want to leave anything out, so I just made some notes for myself to kind of like for talking points about when it's my turn to talk. Um, But yeah, I'm very ready to talk about this.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying we might not have CK and Uncle Bill that want to come in later because they
Mhm.
did do a tragedies in Tinseltown and
Yeah.
they did talk about this topic at one point, and I would be glad to have them on if they are interested in coming on as well as anybody else. Candace, honey, you still have an open invitation. I know Candace said she'd probably just stick to the chat, but if at any point in time you want to come on, you are welcome to. So,
I did talk to Wes today earlier though, and I asked him if he was going to join us at all tonight, and he said he wasn't sure. He said he might pop in, but if he doesn't, he said sorry. He said yeah, if I don't if I can, say I can do something and I can't do it, usually he's got something going on, maybe with like Sarah
right.
or something. So
Yeah, which is totally understandable. And
Mhm.
then I know Uncle Bill, he's got kiddos and all that good stuff and
Right.
and significant other that, he needs to spend time with at some points in time.
Speaking of that, we're having a little like this, family thing like here at the house tomorrow for a little graduation for Noah,
Oh,
because he's he's homeschooled, so and
mhm.
he's going into middle school next year, and so we're going to be doing a little bit of a like graduation type thing for him tomorrow.
That's so sweet. I hope y'all are going to take pictures.
Oh, believe me, Candace will take plenty of pictures.
I want to see pictures of Noah. I almost said little Noah, but he's not little Noah anymore. He's growing up.
Yeah.
That kid's growing like a weed now. It's just, and I feel so old. All I can think about is when he was a baby and me holding him in that picture. And
Yeah.
now
Makes
he's
me
just,
feel old.
I think we're all feeling old about,
No,
about this
I
time.
guess so.
Oh, hey, Mayor, you say rules. We don't need no stinking rules. We want chaos and anarchy. Well, on a regular basis, chaos and anarchy is part of these streams. However, this is a little bit more serious of a topic. So we want to minimize the chaos and the anarchy tonight. But I know I get what you're saying, Mayor. Candace says, and my youngest nephew chose to skip his actual kindergarten graduation to come spend vacation with us early.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, they did come today. I forgot about that. So yeah, our little Henley's gonna be doing his graduation, I guess too. We'll be doing something for him. I think my other nephew, Raiden, he actually his graduation from fifth grade and going into middle school was today because um, Candace's mom went all the way, I think, almost to Louisville to pick him up. So,
Uh huh. So Mayor's going to be multitasking. He's currently editing a TikTok video, so he'll be in and out. That is perfectly fine if y'all have to leave and come back. In fact, I have a blueberry muffin from Starbucks left over from earlier today, so I may go run and get that at some point.
yeah, I seen a video that the mayor posted on his Facebook earlier in his story. It actually wasn't from earlier day. I think it was from yesterday, but I just seen it today, and it was I think it had like some Bauhaus music playing over it. Which
Mhm.
today is World Goth Day. You into any of that goth music like Bauhaus, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, stuff like that?
I like The Cure. I like some of their stuff, but I'm not as familiar with some of the
Oh,
other.
I love it. It's some of my favorite type of music. I like Susie and the Banshees is one of my absolute favorite female artists of all time.
I need to try to listen to more of that. And yesterday was like International Tea Day, and I didn't drink any dang tea for
It,
International.
it seems like there's like a day for everything now, right? Um,
Exactly.
like I just seen that today. Like one of my other friends on Facebook had posted today was World Goth Day. I was like, oh, awesome. I said, and so I like posted a picture of myself too from like Halloween a few years ago where I had like the fake vampire
I
teeth.
saw that. I thought that was cool. Mayor says that's what I'm making a video of, Chris. A
Oh,
World
awesome.
Goth Day
I
video.
need to get on TikTok and follow some people. I like because where I have two phones now, I'm allowed to get on TikTok because I don't know if I explained that to you before, but my job has this policy to where like when I do my timesheets on
Uh,
like my phone or any kind of whatever device it is, I can't use TikTok on that same device. But
oh.
we're but I still like do my timesheet on my older phone. So I got a new one now, and I guess I can download TikTok and start doing maybe checking stuff out on there. I'd be interested in seeing that, Mayor. That sounds really cool.
And Candace will probably, well, Chris, you might be interested in this too. Um, I just made an order at Amazon because I needed to get a shirt or two in to start making shirts for people that have
Mhm.
ordered things from me. But I found an Oingo Boingo album vinyl
Oh, really?
for I think the title of it is "It's a Dead Man's Party," and it has "It's a
I
Dead
would love
Man's
that.
Party"
Yeah, that's my favorite song by them. Yeah.
and it has Weird Science on it, and there were a few
Weird
other
Science.
songs that I was familiar with.
That's Weird Science is probably my favorite. Um, like Brat Pack type movie. Like, gosh, I know his name. Wasn't he does Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Weird Science, all that.
Michael Hall, is that who you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the filmmaker,
Oh,
John
John
Hughes.
Hughes.
John
John.
Hughes, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that Weird Science is probably my favorite John Hughes film. I love
I
that.
like Weird Science, but I'm a Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, all that kind
Well,
of.
I'm biased because it has Bill Paxton, and Bill Paxton is one of the greatest actors ever to me.
I love Bill
Uh,
Paxton.
he's um he's the only actor in history that played a human in Terminator, Predator, and an alien film that was killed by each of those characters. Now, some people will argue and say Lance Henriksen was as well, but Lance Henriksen was an android in Aliens when
Yes,
he
he
played
was
Bishop, so he didn't exactly get killed. If you're not alive already.
something, but yeah, you can't really get killed. Um, Candace says, I am too. Dana, love the Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink. Um, Batman says, Lisa, he ain't got no license. Oh, and 16 Candles as well, too. I was thinking of that. Um, Mary say, don't mean to be nosy, Dana, but how much did you pay for that Wingo Boingo vinyl? They're extremely expensive. Well, this one was a reprint, Mayor. I will say that. So it was $24. So, which I didn't
I
think
didn't
was.
even know they re-released Oingo Boingo records.
Evidently, there must have been several re-releases
Hmm.
of uh, of some of their albums, but I had to have that one because it's a Dead Man's Party and it had Weird Science on it as well. So I was
Hmm.
like, yeah, I think I got to get that.
Is it like the greatest hits album, or do you know what it?
I thought it was just one of their regular albums, but
Okay.
I could be wrong. And it's got colored vinyl. I'm not sure what the color of the vinyl is. I'll be surprised, I guess, whenever it gets here. It's supposed to be here Friday, so maybe it'll get here in time, and I can show it off when me and Candace do Friday Foolish. But
That'd be cool.
if not, I'll show it off at a later time. Oh yeah, you've seen the first print going for $75. Yeah, I probably couldn't have afforded to pay that, but 24 I can afford to pay it. Y'all can probably hear that thunder rumbling around. I think I am actually gonna go grab that blueberry muffin and heat it up real quick. Chris, is there anything that you can uh, keep people engaged with? You can show off stuff or whatever till I get.
I'll figure something out. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'll be right back.
All right, so I guess we could kind of just make up something to talk about while Dana's gone. Um, so let's see. Like I said, today is World Goth Day, and I'm real big into that culture and stuff. I mean, I don't go like hardcore with it or anything, and like light a bunch of candles around my house and sit in the dark and just wear complete like black all the time. Which I do wear a lot of black t-shirts, and always my black hat. I've had this hat for like years now, so it's kind of like my signature hat. But I'm really into like like the goth culture as far as like the music and everything, the fashion. It's really cool to me, especially like the '80s goth stuff. Like we were talking, like I consider Oingo Boingo kind of goth, and Bauhaus and The Cure, like Susie and the Banshees, Kate Bush, um, just I like a lot of stuff like that. CK's in here. It says, "Don't show us your bird crater. I assure you, I will not." Sorry about the disappointment, guys. So, Mayor, you said heading online to order the new reissue of Dead Man's Party. Yeah, I'll probably try to pick that up too. I didn't even know they did a re-release of that. So, Dana, did you figure out what you get your blueberry muffin?
Yes, I did. Starbucks, by the way, has very good blueberry muffins. I must let everybody know that. If you like blueberry muffins, that is.
Oh
I'm,
yeah, I really. Now
I'm pretty sure Blissful does.
my favorite muffins, I actually get them from Walmart. They're called cranberry orange muffins. And I absolutely love them. But so you said you got a storm rolling in there, Dana?
Well, it's hopefully it's easing up a little bit. It's still rumbling thunder. I can still
Is
hear it.
is Garth Brooks in town?
Yeah, he must have just got into town because
Yeah, because the thunder's rolling for sure.
uh, oh, okay. Garrett's in here and Wes is in here, and they want to see the damn talking stick. All right, guys. They think it's a new gimmick I've got. It's this talking stick. All right, we'll bring out the talking stick, okay? There we go. When the talking stick is out, that means only one person can be talking, okay? So there's the
Uncle Bill.
lovely.
Yeah. So you gonna beat the shit out of Steve with it, ain't you?
Oh gosh. Uh, yeah, Uncle Bill's in here saying I'm going to beat the shit out of Steve. Well, I don't know. Only if he's in the virtual environment, because I could I beat the shit out of him with that stick. Um, Garrett says sick. Justice will be served.
Dead Pit needs to bring back Shit Tooth, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
can have like a, little emoji of Shit Tooth whenever it's somebody's turn to talk.
That would be hilarious. Wes says you had the talking stick. Rumor is Deput is doing a talking dick whenever somebody says something stupid. It'll appear. Well, um, Wes, if you and Uncle Bill want to come on here and hang out with me and Chris and talk about this topic, I'd love to have y'all on. Um, if y'all can behave yourselves now, Um, Uncle Bill says, yeah, Crater, shut ye ass when you see that talking stick, or Dana will banish you into the nether realm like in Brain Scan.
That happen, I guess.
I don't think I'm going to have any trouble with Chris at all.
No, no, I'll
I
be good
never
there.
did have problems with him when he's on here. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on here so many times. I like having him on here. So, I guess we'll go ahead and start talking about this. If anybody wants to come in at any time, just please let me know. Um, but Chris, since you're my guest on here tonight, I can give you the floor first, or if you want me to uh, do my initial thoughts.
Just whichever how you want to do it, Dana.
It's a handful of one thing, a pocket full of another, I guess.
Because whenever I talk about because mine's gonna be pretty long winded, because I do have a lot to say about it. So it's just up to you, however you want to do things.
Well, I'm going to read what Wes and Uncle Bill said here, and then I guess I'll go ahead and I'll put my initial thoughts out
Okay.
there, and then I'll put the talking stick up for Chris, and that way he can. But I am in advance of me getting ready to talk here. I'm going to go ahead and put that up there. Um, Wes, you say I can't behave. If anybody wants to hear what I think about the whole thing, we did a Tragedies in Tinseltown episode on a few years ago. I know you can behave, Wes. You wouldn't make somebody feel bad on purpose. I've known you for a lot of years, so I don't think you would do that on purpose. Um, Wes says, "So shit." There it is. I'm gonna make a T-shirt design with this talking stick. It's coming. Y'all just wait for it. Uh, Uncle Bill says, I don't like rules or sticks. Plus, I don't respect anyone's opinion. Oh, come on, Uncle Bill. We can all respect each other's opinion. Opinions don't hurt anybody, but this damn talking stick might hurt somebody if it was real. If I was able to actually, pluck it out of the virtual world. Um, you don't make people feel bad on purpose, Wes. How you want to make out like you're mean like that? You're not mean. So
Have
anyway,
you met Wes?
I've met Wes and been around him multiple times. I think he just puts on a facade. That's what
Yeah, it's
Wes
all
does.
show. big phony.
He's all bark and no bite. That's what I'll say about him. Where have I been? What are you talking about, Uncle Bill? Where have I been? I've been doing streams. Just ask Chris. I've been doing streams all.
I think he means like in regards to Wes.
Oh, Wes. Oh, well. Well, it says Crater Hush. You can't talk. Am I going to be like Mother Superior? Lord, I hope not, Batman. Hey, Chris. He says, evening, everyone. On my work break, thought I would drop in and say hi. Well, we appreciate you coming in to say hello to everybody. So anyway, before I get down this rabbit hole, I think I gave the initial, you know, storyline, the plot, not plot, but the details of the case and what happened on the making of Twilight Zone the movie during John Landis's segment. So I won't keep repeating that. So let me give my initial thoughts, and keep in mind I have sifted through the courtroom footage. I did go back and watch the Cursed Films episode on this. So I'm not just up here talking out of my butt and not, doing my research. Just wanted to let everybody know that. So here's my initial feeling on this. I know a lot of people feel like John Landis got off easy. That John Landis should have served some jail time, prison time. In fact, some people go as far as to say that every one of those people that were on trial should have done time. And this is probably going to be one of the most controversial things I'm going to say, and I hope it doesn't upset anyone. I do not feel that John Landis nor any of the other 4 people should have served prison time or jail time or whatever you want to look at it. Because I feel about this like the jury felt about this, in that it was an accident. It was a horrific accident. I'm not going to make any bones about it. It was a horrific accident. And if you've seen the footage, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Were there things that John Landis could have done better? Oh yeah, there are. Should he have had children at 2:30 in the morning on a movie set? No, he shouldn't have. In fact, that is illegal. But that was not what he was on trial for. And he admitted on the stand, we did have children on the set and on hours that they should not have been on a movie set. Those words came out of his mouth. He did not lie about it. But guys and gals, we got to keep in mind the trial was for involuntary manslaughter. It was not for did he or did he not have children on a set when they should not have been on a set. Okay. So he shouldn't have had the children on the set. And had those children not been on the set, it's perfectly plausible to assume that those children would still be alive today. Or at least they wouldn't been a victim of that horrific accident. However, Vic Morrow was an adult. He was not a child. He's a grown man. He was an actor. And from what I know about Vic Morrow, I didn't know him personally, but things that I've read about him and stuff, I don't think Vic Morrow would be intimidated by the likes of John Landis. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I've seen pictures of Vic Morrow. I've seen Vic Morrow talk, and stuff like that. He didn't seem like to be a mean man, but I think he could have held his own against John Landis. And, there are a lot of directors out there that are hard on the cast, they're hard on the crew, or they're hard on one or the other. I had heard that John Landis was great with actors, but he was hard on his crew. That and uh, I've heard Lucio Fulci could be hard on everybody on his sets. So I just think that there are some things that are going to happen regardless if every I is dotted, every T is crossed. Again, could there have been things that were done better? Could those explosives been checked better? Heck yeah, they could have been checked better. But the problem I have is, and the families were upset. The parents of those poor children, the grandparents of those poor children, they had every right to be angry. And they had every right to be angry at John Landis and the rest of the people on that set. Jennifer Jason Leigh, who was Vic Morrow's daughter, had every right to be angry. I would be angry if it was my family. And I would want justice for my family members. But here's the thing, this person right here, sitting here talking to you guys, was not a family member to either of those group, the kids or Vic Morrow. And that doesn't mean that I'm hard-hearted. It just means that by not being a family member of those people that perished on the set, I feel like I can be more objective because I'm outside of that. Okay. And so, because I am not clouded by hate or anger for a filmmaker that was making a movie when my family members were killed, I feel like I can give a little bit more objectivity to this. Okay. Another thing to remember is there's not a one of us in here in the chat. Me and Chris weren't on that set back in 1982. So anything that may have been said to those children's parents or not said to those children's parents, what may or may not have been said to Vic Morrow, what may or may not have been said between John Landis and the special effects people and the stuntman who was piloting that helicopter, who was a veteran of Vietnam, in case people didn't realize that. So he knew what he was doing, okay, as far as being able to pilot a helicopter. Okay. So because none of us here were on the set at 2:30 in the morning in 1982 when that segment was filmed, anything, unless we have watched it come out of somebody's mouth, is hearsay. It's simply hearsay. And that's just the way I look at it. So people can say anything they want. John Landis could say anything he wanted on the set, but we don't know what he said on the set or what he didn't say on the set. All we can go by is what somebody says that he said, you know. And a lot of things can be taken out of context. Um, you know, John Landis, there is no way on God's green earth that he could have known or foreseen that something like this was going to happen. So any jokes that he may have made before that happened, You got to take that with a grain of salt, people.
Yeah.
You got to take that with a grain of salt because, as far as I know, John Landis isn't psychic. You know, I'm not psychic. Chris isn't psychic. You know, the majority of you in the chat are probably not psychic. Um, but let me look at and see what people are putting in the chat here, and then I'm going to get off my soapbox a little bit, and I'm going to let Chris talk here because he's been waiting patiently to talk. Um, Chris, see, you say you can go online and see the stills on the set where it happened. It's very disturbing. Yes, you most certainly can.
Yeah.
Um, Wes says he's upset already. Well, I don't know what you're upset about, buddy. Uh, Uncle Bill, you say, I think somebody ought to pee in his salt and pepper beard. You talking about John Landis?
Yeah.
Um, and Wes, you are, buddy, you are entitled to your opinion. Your opinion is the incident cost him his career. We're going to talk about his career in the second half of this, but he got off very easily on
I can't tell if Wes is being serious or not. I think he might just be messing with you.
it. Well, I am going to be unshaken tonight, guys and gals. Um, Chris, see, you say it was set in the Vietnam period. Explosions were way too close and they were knee up in water. Um, I
Yeah.
agree with that as well, Chrissy. I certainly do. You can tell in the footage that the explosions are too close. They are way, way too close to both Vic Morrow and those children. And probably, if truth be told, too close to the film crew. Too close to the guy that was piloting the helicopter, which is exactly what happened. Those explosions caused that helicopter to go into a tailspin. It crashed, killing Vic Morrow and those kids. In fact, use a little discretion if you've got kids in the room right now. In fact, the little girl was crushed by the helicopter,
Yeah.
and Vic Morrow and the little boy were decapitated by the helicopter blades. I mean, it's unthinkable. It's horrifying. It's and in no way, shape, or form am I trying to make light of this. It's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, As you say, Lucio Fulci was hard on his cast, but let's be real, none of his actors ever really got decapitated. No, they did not. But there have been other cases of people getting killed on sets or other things happening. Um, it may have been that Cursed Films. It was either Cursed Films or it was one of the other bits of information I was watching that evidently, supposedly, because I don't know this for sure, that Judy Garland was molested by some of the people playing the Munchkins behind the scenes of The Wizard of Oz. I mean, there's all kinds of things that have went on. And I understand what you're saying, Wes, that Lucio Fulci never had any of his actors get decapitated, for which I am thankful. We don't want to see this happening every day of the week. People getting decapitated, but since Twilight Zone the movie, there have been people killed with guns that were not supposed to have live ammunition. Brandon Lee got killed that way.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't believe that the person that accidentally shot him, Chris, do you know? I just want to make sure I got my I's dotted, T's crossed. Was the guy that accidentally shot Brandon Lee, was he ever brought to trial?
Michael Massey.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that honestly, but I know because I think Michael Massey has since passed away now. But I know that I've watched interviews with him and stuff, and he just talked about how that just, he had to live with that for the rest of his life, basically. And he went into, like, a state of depression for years because, he had people pointing the finger at him and stuff, and just saying, he murdered Brandon Lee and all this. And, that's, even if that's not true, if somebody's saying that to you, that's really hard to live with, and that's really hard to, like, to get out of your head, because once, something like that happens, compared to, like, also the Twilight Zone accident, it's burnt in your brain for the rest of your life, whether you want it to be or not.
And I did see a quote from John Landis where he said, I live with what happened on Twilight Zone the movie every day of my life. And people can say that that's, you know, fake, that he doesn't care. I think John Landis very much does care. That's just how I feel about it. I don't understand where people say he's a cold hearted son of a bitch, that he's always laughing and smiling. He wasn't laughing and smiling on the stand. He was crying. There is some footage of him crying. And John Landis is not primarily an actor, he's a director. And the prosecuting attorney said that he was faking, that she'd like to give him an Academy Award for having a few tears when he was up there on the stand. Now, how many court cases would a even a prosecuting attorney get away with saying something like that to someone that's on the stand? And I watched her, this was actual footage. She said, "Would you like some tissues, Mr. Landis?" And he looked at her and he said, "No, I don't." And you could clearly tell that he was shaken by her. Now, I don't know how true this is or not, because this might be hearsay, but it was said that during the court case, the prosecuting attorney walked past John Landis and hissed at him and called him a murderer. If she did say that, I feel that that's very unprofessional, extremely unprofessional. And they called this particular prosecuting attorney, can't even talk tonight, the Dragon Lady, because of her antics in the courtroom. Apparently, she had had a lot of them. So, and she was pissed that she lost this case because she wanted to prosecute every one of those people. Um, but I just personally feel it was a job for her. I don't feel in my heart of hearts that that woman cared about those kids. I don't think she cared about Vic Morrow. I think and keep in mind, guys and gals, this is my opinion only. I don't know this for a fact. I just feel like she only cared about winning another case and not about getting justice for those children and Vic Morrow. Um, Chris C's probably out of here. I missed saying goodbye to him. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think he was just out here, or he was in here on his break from work, I think is what he said.
Okay, Uncle Bill, that's an interesting take on that. He says, I'm not a family member either, but I'm totally convinced he was coked up and didn't take proper precautions nor care about the dangers of that scene. He just wanted the shot.
That's possible. Yeah. I mean,
I
I'm
mean,
not.
it's a possibility, but again, if he was coked up, I'm not saying he should have been coked up, but he was not in his right mental faculty. I mean, they said that Stephen King was coked up when he was making Maximum Overdrive. What if somebody had gotten killed on the set of Maximum Overdrive? Do y'all think that Stephen King should have done prison time? let's say that little steamroller scene went wrong, and I'm not trying to be funny here. I'm trying to be serious. If that steamroller scene had went awry and some kid had really gotten killed, do you guys think that Stephen King should have served prison time? Because I mean, it's the same parameters. If what Uncle Bill says is true, if John Landis was coked up, can he be held responsible for what happened on the set? Uh, Wes is asking, you think Landis has had a successful career post trial? It did end his career. This guy hasn't made anything substantial in decades.
Mm, I mean, I kind of agree with that, and I disagree as well. I mean, it's not as successful, I don't think, as he wanted it to be, but I
Mhm.
believe he did have some success post that. I mean, he wrote the story to the Clue movie adaptation. He did Coming to America. He did Three Amigos. He did two different episodes of Masters of Horror.
Yeah.
Um, several other things too. But like, I feel like he could have been more successful if those events had not happened with the Twilight Zone the movie. Because before that came out, his two biggest ones before that were Blues Brothers and Animal House, and those were huge comedies for that time. And also he did the music video of Michael Jackson's Thriller and the video for Black and White.
Yeah.
And if, like I said, if none of that had happened, because he had all the right contacts. He was working with the biggest people out there. He was friends with Steven Spielberg. Unfortunately, after these events, him and Steven Spielberg stopped being friends.
Right.
And I think that really kind of hurt John Landis. But as far as like saying he didn't have a successful career after the event,
Hmm.
like I'll just say that I don't think he had as successful a career as he wanted it to be, but he
Hmm.
did have success regardless.
Uncle Bill says, the only question I can ask is this: would these people be there at that time doing a dangerous task stunt after work hours without John Landis instructing him to be that way? No. Um, I don't know. Those kids wouldn't have been there. And I brought that up because the kids shouldn't have been there. And I think everybody involved with the production of that segment in Twilight Zone the Movie agrees that those kids should not have been there. Even John Landis admits that they should not have been there.
And can I say something real quick, Dana? I misunderstood Wes's question. So he's saying like, oh, after the trial. Okay, yeah, because the trial was 5 years after the event. I thought he meant like after
Right.
the events of the film. Right. Okay, yeah, and that's my mistake. Well, I would have to think about that then. Probably you're probably right, Wes, and it's because like he didn't really do anything notable past Coming to America. So other than the Masters of Horror episodes, but yeah.
And I agree, Uncle Bill, that being on drugs is not a defense. But my question about Stephen King was, the same thing was said about Stephen King, that he was coked up during the making of Maximum Overdrive, that he was just wasted during the making of it. I don't know that he was. That's just hearsay. It's the same thing with John Landis being on coke during the making of Twilight Zone the movie. It's possible, just like me and Chris said, it's a possibility
Yeah.
that he could have been coked up
Yeah.
or juiced up on something else. But I don't know that.
Yeah.
Um, but having a drug addiction does not make a person an evil person in my eyes. It makes them a human being who's making mistakes. And in this case, there was a combination of a lot of mistakes that led up to one deadly mistake in this case. Um, And of course, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it if that tragedy didn't happen. There wouldn't be multiple videos that have been done on this if that wasn't the case. So I understand everything that Wes is saying, that Uncle Bill is saying, and everything that you guys are saying. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying I want to look at it from all angles. We can look at it from I'm angry. I'm pissed at John Landis. He shouldn't have done XYZ. But I also like to look at it from the flip side too. I like to think, am I being a little too hasty here? Because I've done this with other people, not necessarily with John Landis, but with different things. And I think, okay, Dana, take a step back here. Look at it from another angle. Okay. I know, guys and gals, I know that I'm in the minority here. I did the research before coming on here, and I knew that I was going to be in the minority, that the majority of people either just outright hate Landis now, and or they think he should have done prison time. And I know to some people, I probably come off sounding like the biggest doofus, the biggest idiot that ever was for saying what I'm saying. As Uncle Bill says, it's common sense. And it probably looks like to a lot of you that I don't have any common sense right at the moment. But again, I am simply trying to look at it from all sides, from all points of view. Uh, let's see. Uh, Wes says Coming to America was made before the trial.
Yeah.
Wes also says if somebody is high as a kite driving and they hit a kid and kill them, what would happen to the driver? Well, it has been my experience that they don't always go to prison. I knew a guy from my hometown who was intoxicated. He wasn't high on drugs. He was drunk, and he unfortunately ran over a child and killed them with his vehicle. He did not serve prison time, but let me tell you guys and gals this. He lived with that every single day. He still lives with it. And I'm sure he will live with it till his dying day. So I would be the biggest idiot in the world if I said that John Landis or anybody else that this had, happened in their presence. If I would be the biggest idiot in the world. I'm just talking about myself. I'm not talking about anybody else. If I just said, well, he's a cold-hearted SOB. He didn't care anything about it. He was high as a kite. He was coked up. He didn't care about anybody but making this shot. But again, I got to look at it this way. If he was coked up, I don't think he was thinking anything. I mean, he was, his brain had checked out and went to Honolulu. And so I don't think he was making any decisions. He was probably erratic. If he was on cocaine, I'm sure he was erratic. Um, Uncle Bill says, no one is saying angering about drugs and people being evil. That's ridiculous. I'm saying if he set up a stunt that got someone killed and he was on drugs, he's 100% responsible. To me, he's the lead. Well, these stunt guys and these special effects guys, don't they have balls? Can't they stand up to John Landis? I mean, really, guys, have y'all seen John Landis? I'm not afraid of John Landis. I mean, they could simply walk off the set and say, "You're crazy. I'm not doing this." I don't think John Landis was going to hold a gun to their head and say, "Nope, you're staying here. You're doing that stunt. You're setting up these explosives the way I want you to, or I'm going to kill y'all right here." Now, I mean, honestly, does anybody in the chat, does Chris think that that's what happened? That these people were being held against their will on the set of this movie?
Well, no, but I have to agree with Uncle Bill and CK. He is the boss here. I mean, he is the director. He's the one calling the shots here. So you know, so that's do those effects guys have balls? I would hope so, but they also want to make some money too. I'm sure. So like, it's a double-edged sword, really. It is.
Hmm. And I could see that, and I hope Chris doesn't think I'm getting heated and getting mad at
Oh
him.
no, no, man, I don't care.
And I understand what you're saying. I understand what Uncle Bill's saying. I understand what Wes is saying. But then we'd have to take off another layer here. Did these people have no integrity? Was it just all about making money for them?
Sometimes it is, unfortunately.
And so, in that context, should we put a little more blame on special effects guys, on the stuntmen, in addition to Landis? Or do we want to just keep blaming Landis 100%? Which is
Well,
another.
I'll get into that once I
Okay,
give my little spiel. I have some thoughts on that.
uh, not if they want to keep their jobs. I get it, Uncle Bill. Um, or blacklisted. Um, Warner Brothers has no integrity. Well, I don't know. Warner Brothers, that might be another story for another day.
Well, I mean, he does make a good point though, Dana. I mean, because that was just when that happened. That was just during the filming of the movie. That was before its release and thing. Because that's just how that thing works.
Mhm.
But like Warner Brothers knew what happened, so they could have made a decision. They could have trumped what John Landis wanted, and they
They
could
could
have
have.
just took
Yes.
that segment out, and or filmed something different to put in there, delayed the film's release, but they chose not to, and they chose to leave that segment in there,
Mm,
because, in my opinion on that, is that controversy creates cash,
yeah.
and they
It
were just they
does.
were just concerned about the film making money, and they know that people are attracted to controversy. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, so if all of this, and I'm taking all of this that everybody is saying into my brain, so how do I want to say this? So do we? Are we still? Are still most people in agreement that this was totally on Landis? Chris mentioned Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers could have pulled the plug. Chris is correct on that. They could have said no. And if I would like to think, if I was head of a movie studio, that I would say no. That a great tragedy happened during this segment. We're pulling this one. We're going to film something else or something, and put that in the place. Now, Landis probably would have been angry, because that was his work, tragedy or not, that happened. That was his vision. But that was Warner Brothers' call, and if we wanna talk about Warner Brothers, I say they made a bad call by leaving that segment in. But also, like Chris said, it's all about money, you know. Um, but Wes, I'm sorry. I appreciate you putting that in there, and I respect your response to that. But I just do not feel that the accident was 100% on Landis, and I will say that to my dying day. Nobody's going to change my mind on that one. But y'all are, it's fine that y'all put that in the chat. It would be fine if Chris said it was 100% on Landis. I would not be mad. I'm just here to tell my point of view from the way I see it. But I am going to shut up now, and I'm going to let um, Chris talk, and I'm going to be quiet while Chris gives his thoughts.
Okay. So before I get into it, I just want to just preface this by saying I don't know anything about what John Landis's drug habits were or are, or especially like during the filming of that movie. So I don't really have any opinion on that. So you won't really hear me say anything about that. Um, but just let me start by saying that I do feel very strongly about this topic. This is something I have thought about a lot for several years, and it's a very mixed bag of feelings when it comes to me on this. Because I am very much to this day a huge fan of John Landis's work. I mean, he's done all types of different things, and I also want to preface by saying that I'm not a fan of cancel culture most of the time. Now, there are times when cancel culture is necessary if the actions taken by the individuals are extreme and intentional. Um, but the helicopter accident in Twilight Zone is exactly that. It was an accident. Um, and, you got to think this was during a Wild West era of filmmaking where there were a lot of like gung ho filmmakers that were always trying to one up each other. They were always trying to turn people's heads and grab their attention towards whatever they were working on. Um, Friedkin, De Palma, and Carpenter were like fine examples of that. And John Landis was really no different, in my opinion. He was a part of that competitive filmmaking. Um, John Landis was also friends with Steven Spielberg, and they landed this huge property in the Twilight Zone because before this movie, the Twilight Zone was a TV series, anthology series, if you want to call it that. It's my favorite show of all time. So for them to come together and to work on a property, such as Twilight Zone, is huge. And Landis saw this as a huge opportunity to go huge with this and to stand out in that competitive world of filmmaking. He wanted to do something bigger than all of these other guys that were, huge filmmakers at the time. But that raises a question. Do I agree with the strategic decisions that John Landis conducted during the filming of his segment? Not exactly. There are actually several things I disagree with, including the use of live machine gun rounds, uh, the the violation of California's child labor laws, and the non-disclosure of information regarding the helicopter and pyrotechnics to the children's families, the on-set fire safety officers, and even parts of the crew. Um, so, from what I understand, the children involved asked before, or the parent, I'm sorry, the parents of the children involved they asked beforehand if what their children was doing was going to be dangerous, and unfortunately, basically they were lied to, And to avoid the child labor laws, they were paid under the table just to get them on board with the film. Um, and I kind of see this as a selfish and egotistical decision in an attempt to achieve success for the film and just one upping fellow filmmakers. Because that's what they want. That's what John Landis wanted. He wanted to get this made no matter what. Um, and with that said, dangers are always present on set in filmmaking, and stuntmen will be the first people to tell you that. And what is safely planned out can sometimes go wrong. Um, and that's exactly, I think, what happened here. It's absolutely horrific. It's an absolutely horrific accident where 6 people were injured from the helicopter and 3 people were killed. And, there's criminal activity on a lot of like films when they're in the process of filming. It's not uncommon, and like I said, several filmmakers have taken risks to project their vision, I guess you could say, of what they want the film to be. So like I said, accidents can happen and things can go wrong in any situation. When something goes wrong, people are quick to find a person to blame. Um, so in this situation, a lot of fingers were pointed towards John Landis because he was the segment's director and because he enforced several questionable decisions, in my opinion, leading up to the accident. So people were focused on that. People were focused on the decisions John Landis was making to in order for this film to happen. Um, and Landis is at fault for those decisions. Um, in order to achieve his vision, there's no possible way he could have ever known what would end up happening. There's just no way, because unless he's just like some sadistic psychic or something, which I don't think that's the case. But like again, I'm not friends with John Landis. I don't know what he thinks about this situation. I want to think that he's living with it for the rest of his life in guilt of and he feels responsible. But it was a freak accident, and I believe this is why he was ultimately acquitted of those charges, which I do agree to an extent. I do personally feel, I know that you disagree with this, Dana, but I do personally feel that a small amount of jail time should have at least been served because of the violation of laws that he was, committing during the film. Um, but I'll say this in conclusion, I am of the belief that everything happens for a reason. And just hear me out on this. When we as human beings have a difficult time sometimes understanding that, because everything that happens is not always good, positive. Um, but that's how life goes, unfortunately. And events that happen in life always lead to other events. In this case, and this is, like I said, this is just my opinion, guys. In this case, something negative turned into a positive because due to what happened, safety procedure policies were changed and handled a lot better going forward in the film industry, preventing what happened from happening again. So while the helicopter accident is one of the worst things to ever happen in the history of film, that's just my belief that it happens for a reason. And, while it's a terrible, terrible, horrific reason, said it, they looked at the people that makes those decisions looked at that and said, let's change these policies. Let's prevent this from ever happening ever again and save, people's lives and, put a stop to these, power hungry filmmakers. And like I said, that it's one the helicopter accident is one of the worst things in the history of film, and it's burnt forever in the brains of everyone involved. That's just something they will remember for the rest of their lives. And the loss of Vic Morrow, Micah Denley, and Renee Shin Yi Chin is a feeling I can't even fathom. I can't fathom when it comes to their families, their respective families, like how they feel about this. Um, I would hope that at some point um, in life, some closure from both sides can be achieved, and a grudge wasn't held against John Landis or members of the production team or anybody involved. But I know that sometimes it's not that easy, and it's completely understandable because, with all due respect to Vic Morrow and his family, the deaths of these children here is the biggest tragedy, and I feel that way because no parent should ever have to witness their kids being killed. I mean, that's an absolute nightmare for me to even think about as a parent. And beyond all this, John Landis still had a successful career after the events. Maybe not as much after the trial and everything, but he people knew what happened. People knew after the events, they knew it, but he still continued in filmmaking, and he came out with some a relatively popular films. Um, but past that, the trial, not a whole lot. At least anything really super notable. I mean, he did was coming out with several things, was working on several things, but just like not as reputable as he would want it to be. And like I said, it's just due to the internet and social media. The talk of the Twilight Zone accident has come back up, after decades of that, because that was happened like over 40 years ago. And because people started talking about this again on social media, on the internet, and everything, it brought a lot of people to light about this event. Some people that didn't even know about this. But and unfortunately, that did for unfortunately for John Landis, it sent him back into a hiatus. Because I think the last thing he was like working on was around like 2012 or 2015 or something, and he took a huge hiatus, and then he came back in 2021, where he and I looked this up just earlier. He directed 26 episodes of a superhero cartoon starring Arnold Schwarzenegger called Superhero Kindergarten. Um, but like that's the last thing I've seen that he actually worked on. But like I didn't even know that existed until today. So that's just that's kind of my point. Um, but like as I said in the beginning, I am a huge fan of John Landis's work. I probably always will be. Um, I think he had a historic filmmaking range from comedy to horror to sci-fi to music videos, because he worked on several music videos as well and directed. And and during that time, he was working with some of the top people in the film industry, the music industry. Um, so he was, before all this happened, and the trial and all that, he was at the top of the list for some of those studios' choices to direct. I mean, to me, Blues Brothers is one of the greatest comedy films of all time. But this is the last thing I'll say. If it were my child involved in that situation, God forbid, I'd possibly have a different view on things. But I did not experience that. Um, I pray that I never have to, because that is absolutely terrible. Um, but like I said, I'd possibly have a different view on it if it were my child. Throughout my life, and I think that that's completely understandable if you do. Like if anybody disagrees with me here today, I understand completely. I understand and I respect that. I respect everybody's opinion on this because this is a very hard topic to talk about. But and but I'll just say this. However, I do believe in forgiveness, and I hope if it hasn't already happened, it can be achieved in time between those two parties. Um, and like I said, that's just a personal belief, and um, that's really all I got to say.
Very well said, Chris. I applaud you for, I feel like you looked at it objectively. I appreciate you putting all of that out there. And it's obvious that Chris did his homework for this. And this is exactly what I wanted to achieve with this. I had hoped that we would have more people on the stream with us live. Um, but, you know, I'm not sure if people are choosing to stay off here because they're afraid Dana will go ape shit on them or what. But I promise I will not. If somebody still wants to come on here, I will not. Um, I'll take a look at some of these messages that were being put in there while Chris was talking. I just didn't want to interrupt him in the middle of his thoughts. Wes does say, I like Landis's movies too. We met the guy, he was great, but I'm just being honest, which is a good point that Wes makes. He says, we met the guy, he was great. Okay, so that's why, not anything Wes said, but that's why I don't understand sometimes people that I just don't understand. It's just not, it's me not understanding why, if the guy is a pretty good guy, why people have so much hate for him. I know this accident happened, but hate's a strong emotion to have for somebody that we don't really know. I could understand Jennifer Jason Leigh hating him. I could understand the parents and grandparents of those two young children hating him. What I can't understand is anybody that was outside of that having real hate for John Landis. Um, and, you know, I have heard people say, I hate him.
Yeah,
I have heard people say none of his movies are any good, which I don't understand that. We've just talked about some great films already. And when I do this John Landis retrospective that'll be upcoming, I'm going to talk about them all. You know, we're even going to talk about Twilight Zone the movie again. So be prepared. Um, but in that case, we're going to primarily talk about the movie as a whole and the segments as a whole, as opposed to talking about the tragedy that happened during that one particular segment. Um, So Uncle Bill says Friedkin could have easily gotten someone killed, but he didn't. Landis did, though. Well, maybe Friedkin was just lucky because I know Friedkin, he was part of what Chris referred to as that Wild West, that guerrilla filmmaking.
hmm
That, what happened to John Landis and what happened on that set? What happened to Vic Morrow and those children? Could have happened on any of these directors' productions, any of them, but they didn't, exactly. But I just think Friedkin was lucky, and that's not me disrespecting Friedkin. I think Friedkin was one of the greatest filmmakers of our time.
And am I misremembering this or not, Dana? Because it seems like I heard this at one point. Did Freakin like pull a gun on somebody on the set of The Exorcist?
He would fire a gun around Jason Miller a lot to get a reaction. He wouldn't tell you he was going to do it. He'd just spontaneously shoot off a gun. And Jason Miller went to him and said, look, dude. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but look, I don't need this outside stimulation. I'm an actor,
Yeah.
you know, and he got really angry at Freakin'. There were not deaths on the set of The Exorcist, but there were injuries, numerous injuries. Ellen Burstyn was injured in the scene where Reagan is masturbating with the crucifix. When she throws her mother backwards, you see Ellen Burstyn fly backwards. And
Hmm.
if you're looking closely, you can see her wince and grab her back. That's because she injured herself during that. The scene where Reagan is flying up back and forth on the bed and she's screaming, it's burning, it hurts. She was really injured in that. Linda Blair was, because the rig that they had her in had some metal on it that came loose as they were filming the scene. So she had metal constantly hitting her in the back. She got bruised up really bad. So, you know, there are injuries, numerous injuries on a lot of movies. We're just damn lucky that there's not more deaths.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, freaking messed around with that gun and everything on set. That could have resulted a lot worse than what was going on. I mean, he could have actually went off and shot and killed somebody.
Yeah.
But thankfully it didn't. And like just going back again to the Twilight Zone accident, like like I said, guys, that's what it is to me. It's an accident because like you know, he, John Landis, I don't think he's some kind of evil mastermind or anything that knew that he had that planned out to make these explosives bigger and bigger in order because it's like I read something where it said the lid of the mortar came off and hit the back rotor of the helicopter, which
Yeah.
is what caused it to to fail and come down into the river. But yeah, it's just that it's just a freak accident, and like it could have been prevented, absolutely. If but because I just feel like John Landis just was just trying to go over the top. He wasn't trying to get anybody killed. I don't believe that at all. But and I don't think he could have knew what was going to happen. Like I said, but he was just went over the top with this because he was being a competitive filmmaker who
Mhm.
was trying to show that he's got the biggest balls in the land. Um, and, he showed that, but what did it result with? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's why these filmmakers, they gotta take a step back, and realize, what could happen if you do this. Have you considered that? And I think maybe Friedkin did consider that, and that's why he probably could have been a lot more reckless on
Yeah.
his sets. But in a sense, he also got lucky. I think that's happened a lot over time. Some people just get the short end of the stick, and something terrible happens.
Mhm. Um, Uncle Bill also says, I don't think he intended to kill anyone, which is a very good point. I think we're all in agreement that he didn't intend to kill anyone, which is a good thing because I wouldn't want everybody thinking, oh, Landis was a mastermind. He planned to kill people. He was just negligent. I agree, he was negligent in a lot of areas. Um, and Chris brought up a very good point that he should have served jail time for breaking child labor laws and stuff like
So,
that. But I have to reiterate, and I'm not saying Chris is wrong. I have to reiterate that we have to keep in mind what the trial was for. The trial was for involuntary manslaughter.
right.
The trial was not, did he or did he not break child labor laws,
Yeah.
or some of these other laws that he broke in spades, unfortunately. Um, And he admitted, like I said, he admitted breaking child labor laws on the stand in front of a jury, in front of the judge, in front of the lawyers. He wasn't shy about saying, "Yes, we broke those laws." So if they wanted to bring an extra charge against him, they could have, but nobody did. Um, but the what bothers me is the fact that maybe they had to get maybe they had to get all this information together to make a case. But my question is, why did it take 5 years for them to do this? Why did they wait 5 years before they brought these people up on charges? Now, is there something I'm missing here, a puzzle piece I may be missing?
Well, that's it. Just took 5 years for the trial to happen. I mean, there's a lot of like stuff that goes on before these court cases. Some of them can take years before the trial even happens, because, like I said, there was a lot of like stuff that they had to cover for this particular trial. So it just had to be basically, planned out, like what's going to be done here and there. That plus they had, their scheduled dates around that, because they either probably had something going on with other court cases, or somebody had something going on that was involved the case that they had to delay. So I don't really know the full details on that, but I just know, like, in general, that like when a trial happens, it doesn't happen like straight away after whatever they're on trial for.
I just thought that the 5-year thing seemed long, maybe a year or
Yeah, it
two.
could be, like I said, it could be a multitude of things, but like I said, I don't really know about that.
Um, so Uncle Bill went on to say it's no different than throwing rocks off a bridge at cars. Maybe you don't kill someone, but your behavior is damn likely to. And that's good, very good points. I am not belittling anybody's points that they're making. Um, Uncle Bill says you set in motion a chain of dangerous events that put people at risk. A lot of times that works out. That time it didn't. Yeah, and I think a lot of these filmmakers and the filmmakers from that time period, every time they went on set, I feel like they played Russian roulette.
That's a good way
You
to
know,
put it.
they spun the chamber and took off running. You know, um, and in Landis's case, it didn't go well. You know, when they spun that chamber, there was a bullet there waiting to kill somebody, and unfortunately, it did. It killed several somebodies and injured people, and a lot of just bad juju there. And I am in agreement with Chris that some people might not like this, but I am in total agreement with him that things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
And the positive to come out of that, if you can think of anything positive come out of such a horrific accident, is that it makes people sit up and take notice and say, we got to put some safeguards in place so that something like this doesn't happen again. And so that I wanted to make that known that Chris brought up a very, very important point. That is very, very important. We don't always like to think about things happen for a reason, and some people get really pissed when you say that to them. But if you look at historically, if you look at certain things that have happened over time, what kind of things have happened, like from, um, you know, child abductions? We'll switch gears a little bit here. And this is another very tough case to bring up, and it has nothing to do with movies. But when little 6-year-old Adam Walsh was abducted from a shopping mall, We did not have the type of ways to track children, ways to find children quickly that had been abducted when he was abducted. Had we had those in place, that poor child may have not died in such a horrendous fashion, and he may have been returned to his parents. So, although his abduction was horrible, it was terrible. That that dear child had his head cut off. A 6-year-old child had his head cut off. And to me, that's in the same vein as what we're talking about here, because one of those young children on Twilight Zone the movie was decapitated. But with Adam Walsh, we don't know if that child knew what was coming. It was indicated that that Vic Morrow and the kids never really knew what happened. They were dead before they could know anything about it. But Adam Walsh, did he see this bad person coming with something to cut his head off? I have to think about things and sorry for getting a little emotional. Anytime I think about the Adam Walsh case, it just gets me all tore up. But I just had to make a little, comparison here. I'm not saying one thing is better than the other. I'm just saying the Adam Walsh case set in motion a chain of events that helps children be recovered now a lot more quickly and before bad things like that happen. Adam Walsh was gone for I don't know how long. He was missing for I don't know how long before they found, and I think they just found his head, folks. They never found his body. But had the safeguards that are in place now been in place then, that little boy may have gotten returned to his family. He may have been traumatized. There's no doubt he would have been traumatized. But he more than likely would have gotten returned to his family, would have been able to grow up, have kids of his own. But that child can never do that because those safeguards weren't in place. So this accident was so horrific that it made people sit up and take notice and said that, hey, we've got to do something. We've got to try our best to make sure that this never happens again.
Mhm.
And guys and gals, that is the only solace we can take from this, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's like I said earlier, when something so terrible like that happens, it's hard for us to accept that anything positive could come of it because, all we're focusing on when that happens is the negative aspects of it.
Mhm.
And just with the Adam Walsh case, with the kids from Twilight Zone, we're so wrapped up in you know, the negative aspects of it, like I said, and we just we're focusing on how terrible that is, and it is, and it's very important to focus on that. I think because that's just a part of it all, is to grieve and to just let your feelings out of it, even if those feelings are of anger. That's going to happen. We're human beings. That's what we do. Um, But like I said, it's always difficult for us in the beginning to accept any kind of positive to come of something so terrible.
Mhm.
But like I said, and nobody, I mean, there's a lot of people that's not going to agree with that, but it's just, you have to remain positive in this life because if you focus solely on the negative, your life is going to be miserable and
Mhm.
you're going to be so full of hatred that you can't see straight. and you can't think straight. But like I said, like especially, I'm glad you brought that whole Adam Walsh case up because that's a very emotional thing for me as well. Um, and that's just a perfect example of what a positive difference came out of that terrible situation. You know, it's just it's a tough thing to talk about. You
Mm.
know, it's not like I said, it's something I have thought about like in my own thoughts for years. And this is the first time I've ever talked publicly, other than with Candace, and like in privacy. But this is the first time I've ever talked about this kind of stuff publicly and how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I said, I respect everybody else's opinions if they differ from mine, and I completely understand. I can see your side of it too. Because, like I said in the beginning, this is a very mixed bag of feelings for me. And I have fought with myself over my feelings of it. And some of the things that I said, I question whether I should say them or not. But
Me.
it's just honesty. It's how I feel. I don't expect, you know, people to listen to what I say and agree. But it's just I got to put it out there. I got to get that off my chest because it gives me some form of relief doing that. Um, but yeah.
But I feel like um, I feel like I just need to go outside and just take a deep breath now because. But on the other side of that coin, this has been very cathartic because I feel like this is something that, like Chris said earlier, this stuff with Twilight Zone the movie, the tragedy that happened, that's been coming back up recently.
Hmm.
And people are starting to talk about it again. And when people started talking about it again, my emotions started resurfacing again. And so I think that it was important for me and Chris and you guys and gals in the chat to come on here and discuss this and have a little push and pull, a little tug of war. And I think this was very healthy for everybody. Very, very healthy.
Okay.
And that is what I wanted this show to be. I did not want it to be a bitch fest. I did not want it to be where people were arguing and fighting and getting all bent out of shape. And we didn't do that. I don't feel like we did that at all. Um, I I get a little animated sometimes, but that's just the way I am. Steve can tell you how animated I get around here sometimes. But um, so what I want to do in closing of this, and y'all feel free to put, whatever you want in the chat. But I just want to talk a little bit about Landis's entire career.
Hmm.
You can, Chris, I'll let you go first since I went first with the original part of it. And what you can do is just talk about some of your favorite stuff that Landis has done. Maybe some highlights for you, something really spectacular some spectacular shot in a movie or something like that. However you want to handle it, but the floor's yours, Chris.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have several like films that I actually love of John Landis's. I guess I could start with American Werewolf in London. I mean, if you're a horror fan or just a werewolf genre fan in general, you probably know what American Werewolf in London is. I mean, it was really innovative with as far as like effects of the transformation scenes, like done by Rick Baker, and and before that film came out, John Landis had did Animal House and he did Blues Brothers, so he was really known for comedy.
Yeah.
And to see him venture into horror was kind of eye-opening to be like, oh wow, here's this comedy film director. He's doing a horror movie. But here's American Werewolf in London. There's also comedy
Yes.
put into that film. There's actually a lot, you know. And that's like I said before on here, that is something that I love about horror. That's probably my favorite horror subgenre. Well, no, slashers is probably my favorite, but comedy horror is probably my second favorite subgenre. I just because while horror is my favorite genre of films, comedy is a very close second because I love to laugh. I think laughter is a great medicine for people to like because it's very if you can find a good funny movie to watch and like say you're having a bad day and you start watching that movie, it changes your mood completely.
Yeah.
And for me personally, if I'm having a bad day, as much as I love horror movies, the last thing I want to watch is a horror movie if I'm having a terrible day. Because, especially if it's one that has a lot of like, gore and death and everything in it, because that's, while that doesn't really bother me on like a regular basis, if you're already in a bad mood, you don't really want to fool with that stuff and see it because it just puts more negative thoughts into your head. Unfortunately, I mean, at least that's how I am. But as far as like like American Werewolf in London, like I said, that's probably top tier like werewolf films of all time. I know it's a lot of people's favorite. It's not my favorite, but it's up there for me, definitely. It's up there as one of my favorite John Landis films. Now, but when I think of John Landis films, while I do think of American Werewolf in London, my favorite films that he's put out are his comedies.
Mm-hmm.
And Blues Brothers is probably my favorite film that he put out. I mean, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Carrie Fisher, all these people that are included in that film is just, and it's got one of the best police chase like sequences ever.
Right.
I mean, especially when they're going through the mall in Blues Brothers, that's like one of the best scenes ever. I love that, and just the dry humor in that is what I love the most about it. Is it's just phenomenal. It's a spectacular movie. I've seen it hundreds of times. Probably I've probably seen Blues Brothers more than probably any other film that I've ever watched, and that's saying a lot because Gremlins I've seen a lot. That's my favorite movie of all time. But I probably have seen Blues Brothers more than any other movie I've ever watched because I just grew up watching it with my dad. My dad was watching it like all the time. If he wasn't watching Andy Griffith Show or Bonanza or Gunsmoke or something like that, if he was watching Blues, if it ever came on TV, he would watch it. And to segue into talking about Blues Brothers, I guess I could talk about Animal House as well because that also stars John Belushi, and there's a lot of people in that one as well that are coming, up and coming names in the industry. So I'm not sure on this, but I always felt that John Landis was close with John Belushi.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he brought him back to work on Blues Brothers after they had done Animal House. And I could be wrong about this, but I thought I'd heard a rumor because when Dan Aykroyd was doing Blues Brothers with John Landis, he was already Dan Aykroyd was already in the process of writing Ghostbusters.
I believe you're right.
And because I know that I've heard this about John Belushi was actually supposed to be a part of Ghostbusters
Mm-hmm.
instead of Bill Murray. But unfortunately, John Belushi did pass away and he couldn't be part of that. But what I had actually heard was that John Landis was originally supposed to be involved with Ghostbusters as well. And I'm just trying to picture that if he was like how different it would have been. But just due to everything going on with the events of Twilight Zone and him having issues with that kind of stuff, like I think that kind of troubled it a little bit. I mean, he was still working at the time. He was still releasing films, but I don't, like I said, but it's just a rumor I've heard. I don't know if there's any truth to that. Um, but there's several other films that John Landis is, like I said, as far as comedies, my favorite films of his are his comedies. Coming to America, Trading Places. He worked with Eddie Murphy a couple different times. He worked with Dan Aykroyd several times. Um, and I felt like that he really had some good chemistry with those people that he worked with several times, and that's why they wanted to continue to work for him. Um, they could have been on the same wavelength. I don't know. I don't know what went on behind closed doors and the personal conversations between those, but like I just felt like Trading Places and Coming to America are two of the top like Eddie Murphy films I think that's ever been made. John Landis also did Beverly Hills Cop 3 with Eddie Murphy. Um, yeah, there's just so much I could really talk about, but I mean, um, I just kind of wanted to briefly talk about that because I know you said you're going to be doing a John Landis retrospective,
Yep.
uh, and I'd like to be part of some of those with you, and just
Oh, well, you are certainly welcome to. Yes, since that'd probably be a good segue into me giving a little background on this upcoming retrospective on John Landis's films, which will be called Landis Confidential. Not because we're going to give any confidential information about John Landis, but I try when I do these retrospectives on these directors and actors and actresses and stuff, I try to come up with a film title that has, like, I did My Dinner with De Palma, which we have dinner, the D in dinner, and we have the D in De Palma. So I try to pick titles that can kind of play around with that aspect. So the My Dinner with De Palma was like a play on My Dinner with Andre. Um, I did Camp Cronenberg. There's a lot of camp movies that can be attached to. Um, and instead of L.A. Confidential, we get Landis Confidential with this upcoming.
that's a good one, Dana. I actually thought of a cool name too that you could use it for something if you want to, or anybody else would use it because like I said, I'm still trying to work on some ideas and stuff for whenever I do my YouTube channel. But like, I was a cool name also would be just because of how John Landis was, and it kind of plays into his name, which is Outlandish Landis.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, and but yeah, I'm like I said, despite everything that happened with Twilight Zone, I'm still very much a fan of John Landis's work and just what he's done for filmmaking. Um, Now that's completely different from like what I think about personally about him, like outside of the film industry and
Mm.
decisions he's made. So I like keeping those things separate because because like I said, even though there are negatives of things, you got to have a positive too. It's like a yin yang.
Mm.
There's light and there's night and there's day to everything. Um, there's really no in between most of the time.
Mm. Yeah, and that, I'm not gonna dwell too much on the tragic stuff that we talked about earlier, but I was just remembering, I'm not gonna say who this person is because I don't like to just blurt somebody's name out there if they're a person that does a lot of high profile videos on YouTube, and this person does. It's not anybody in our circles, I'll tell you that much. But this is a very high profile person, and it's not Sean Clark either, that does those location visits and stuff like that. But there's a lot of guys and gals out there now that do those types of things. They're just popular. But I was watching this guy talk about the Twilight Zone, the movie tragedy, and he actually went to Vic Morrow's grave. He went to the graves of the two children, But what bothered me at the beginning of before he even got into anything was that he basically said that, or I took it this way, that John Landis never made a good film. And I just felt like, and he'd already said how angry he was with John Landis for what John Landis did on Twilight Zone the movie. So I'm just wondering if his judgment of John Landis's movies was clouded by his anger at John Landis and what he had done on this one particular film. So do you have any thoughts on that, Chris, one way or the other?
I mean, I think a lot of stuff is like when people say stuff like that. I mean, it's out of anger, and sometimes it's just their emotions, you know, seeping through uh, at that moment. Because sometimes when you say things in the moment, it's not always 100% how you really feel. Um, I mean, let's just say, for example, you're in an argument with someone, and that argument is getting heated,
Hmm.
and sometimes some things slip out that you don't really mean. And
Right.
so later, if you're, whether it be your significant other or your friend or whoever it is, you'll, if you want to keep a bond with that person, you see yourself, apologizing at times. But not everybody's always like that. Some people are so, prideful and hard headed that they can't apologize for things.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
And this, and then there's also people that that's just how they, sometimes that is the case where they actually just feel that way, and they're being honest. So it's really can go different ways as far as that person's concerned. I can't tell you how it really is because I'm not them. I
Right.
don't know what they're truly feeling, but
Mhm.
I just know what was said by them. But like I said, it could be the case where it was just at the heat of the moment, you know, anger was coming through. And
Yeah.
so because, for me as a fan of John Lance's work, I mean, that's just so hard for me to even, that would be so hard for me to say that he has never made a good film.
Yeah.
But, that's also, that you can look at, it's just that his personal preference for people.
Mhm.
There are a lot of films that I don't like. There's directors out there that I say that person's never made a good film. Does
Right.
that mean that's fact because I said it? No, that's
Right.
just how
Exactly.
I feel, and that's the beauty of it is that and that's it kind of like fits into the why you have this show,
Mhm.
apples and oranges, because not always people are not always going to agree on something.
Exactly. Exactly. No, Mayor X-Ray, I'm not talking about the Grim Life Collective. He may have that guy may have done a similar thing. But no, I am not talking about him. I'm talking about another person. I also seen that Sean Clark did a video where he was going to the different locations in Twilight Zone the movie, and he actually went to the spot where the helicopter crashed. But I like the way, and I'm not just saying this because I'm trying to kiss Sean Clark's ass or anything. I like the way Sean Clark handled it personally. Just me personally, I like the way he handled it because he didn't really talk about John Landis. He didn't really talk about his emotions about that. He merely said, "This is where it happened. I'm standing here where this tragic event happened." And that was basically all he said about it.
Yeah,
Um, but, well, who is Graham Collective Diner? I said Trim Collective. Yeah, but I think he said it sounds like that. But trust me, it's not Grim Life Collective. It is not him. No, Mayor, it's not Adam the Woo either. y'all are gonna dance around till y'all
You're
get
not going to get any answers out of Dana, people. I mean, this is the same person who can't tell you which one is better, The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, or the miniseries. So you're not going to get any straight answers from her.
Well, I respect this person, and I've watched a lot of their videos,
Yeah,
and
it's Tony Moran, X-Ray. That's it.
Tony, yeah. Um, but I did want to bring up a few things that people put in the chat. Candace says, I'm a big fan of his films. American Werewolf in London is my favorite werewolf film of all time. See, people look at me like I put my clothes on sideways when I say that I like it better than The Howling. I love The Howling. There's no doubt about that. But if I was to compare, you're going to get my opinion on this one. The Howling and American Werewolf in London. There's just something extra that I enjoy just a little bit more in American Werewolf in London than I do The Howling. That doesn't mean that I don't like The Howling. I watch The Howling a lot, but
I I'm a little bit different on that. Like I prefer The Howling over American Werewolf in London, but as far as like the transformation scene goes, I prefer the transformation scene in American Werewolf in London more than I do The Howling. But
yeah.
I think I'm a little bit biased with The Howling because it is a Joe Dante flick.
Okay.
It also kind of doubles as a slasher,
hmm
and that's super like interesting to me. And for some reason, I love the ending, even though like Dee Wallace transforming into that dog looking
Or
werewolf. I mean, it looks like
dog looking thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny to me, and it's like it, I don't know. It's just it kind of fits into my humor,
Yeah.
as why I love that because it's so different from the rest of the film. Because it's like it's like Joe Dante's humor, just like he's like. This whole movie is going to be scary and serious, and then we're going to have this a goofy ending. And it's like he done that intentionally. It's like because if you look at how his humor is,
Yeah.
when he made Gremlins 2, all of Gremlins 2 is basically making fun of the first Gremlins movie.
Yeah.
Because if you and one scene in particular is if you remember in the first Gremlins movie, when Phoebe Cates' character is telling about the story about how she found out Santa Claus wasn't real and everything.
Mhm.
So they kind of play that back in Gremlins 2 with she's telling another story, and it's got like, Zach Galligan and some other people are like standing behind her, like rolling their eyes, like, oh, here we go again. And that's basically what Gremlins 2 was, is because, he was just taking everything that was supposed to have been serious in the first Gremlins, but just making fun of it in Gremlins 2. And I think that whole scene with the Wallace at the end of The Howling was very intentional to be humorous.
Yeah, where everybody be like, "What in the heck? What is this?" Um, Candace also says she grew up on films like Trading Places, The Blues Brothers, and Animal House. I did too. My dad introduced me to the Blues Brothers, and he also introduced me to the television version, people. I'm not going to tell you that my dad introduced me to the rated R version of Animal House. That came later. I watched that later. But the television version of Animal House, my dad did introduce me to that, and he introduced me to the Blues Brothers. So I have my dad to thank for having a love of both of those films. Trading Places was one I pretty much discovered on my own. Um, Blizzle says that American Werewolf in London was the first horror movie that gave her nightmares. And Candace, I have to completely agree with that. She says, not to mention the fact that Thriller is arguably the greatest music video ever made. Yeah, I agree 110% with that.
Yeah, he made Thriller. Think about that. I mean, Michael Jackson was he was the hottest thing in music in the 80s. That's why they called him the king of pop.
Yeah,
Then, if and you throw in the horror aspect of that, which horror was a very big thing within the 80s. and I think that was the why they went with that choice, to for him for why he wrote that song, because Michael Jackson, he realized, like this is going to be successful, Plus, at that when the time it came out, I mean, I can't remember if it was exactly the same year, but it was around the time when Return of the Living Dead came out as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you throw Vincent Price in there as well. I mean, it's and then that album, just the Thriller album alone that he put out, is one of the most best selling albums of all time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to talk about when it comes to
I
that.
remember the first time I saw the Thriller music video, I was like, "Holy crap!"
But I
It
didn't
blew my
realize until today that John Landis also did the black and white video for Michael Jackson.
mind.
And
Yeah, I think I'd forgotten that.
so, like, there are actually in that music video, there are two different endings to that video, and I always remember the one where like he like turns into the panther at the end of the video. But
Yeah.
there's another one where like he like Michael Jackson goes crazy and takes a ball bat and starts like busting out the windows of a car, and he's just like constantly just screaming,
Uh,
and it's crazy. If you've ever
I
seen
have
it, you know what I'm talking
an
about.
image in my mind of him doing that. That's crazy. Um, Candace says, "Want to see something scary?" I'm a fan of the Twilight Zone, the movie in general. That intro scared and still scares the living daylights out of me. It still creeps me out because you're always expecting, because Dan Aykroyd's in that part, okay? And my mind just thinks Dan Aykroyd comedy. Dan Aykroyd comedy. So when he turns into that creature and attacks the other guy in the truck, I'm like, holy cow. That was scary because you have that shot of uh, Dan Aykroyd saying, "You want to see something really scary?" And then he kind of smiles and turns. And when he turns back around, he's this monster. And I'll tell you, the first time I watched that, I was not expecting that at all. So that is a very scary intro to any film. Um, let's see. Uh, No, it's not Wet Movie 1, it's not Tony Moran, not Rainbow Wrap.
It's Tony Moran. Don't lie, Dana.
It's not Shit Tooth, the gay demon from hell. Okay, so Uncle Bill has a question. He says, "Here's a question. Does what happened with Twilight Zone affect your ability to enjoy his other films?"
No,
Me personally, it doesn't.
no. It's I'll compare it to this. Um, the stuff with Brian Peck. Does that affect my ability to watch Return of the Living Dead? Hell no. That's
Me
one of my favorite horror films of all time, and he's a minor character in that, Brian Peck. So while John Landis is the director, and he was the main boss over that film, it's well, so to say, it's apples and oranges for me.
Very good, Chris. We need to figure out a way to work in apples and oranges, the title of these streams, every time we do one. Uh, Uncle Bill says, "I like American Werewolf in London over The Howling." So Uncle Bill's like me with that one. Um, X-Ray, Oh Curly Jaws is not really, I don't think Oh Curly Jaws is going by Oh Curly Jaws anymore. And I don't think that they would mind me mentioning this. Oh Curly Jaws identifies as a female now.
Yeah, I think they go by Rob Zombie Chick, something like that. Is there a channel
They
on YouTube?
also go by Hope.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, right. But I was talking about their username on
Rob
YouTube.
Zombie Chick, yeah, when they're in here, yeah, they go under the Rob Zombie Chick. So, and pronouns, pal. I know what Uncle Bill's getting.
Yeah,
That's why I try to say they, so I don't mistakenly. I don't think Hope is going to mind, but just try to be careful in general.
No, they're cool. They're cool. I think they would understand.
Mayor says number one, The Howling. Mayor's talking about werewolf films, evidently. Two, American Werewolf in London. Three, The Wolf Man. Four, Ginger Snaps, and five, Dog Soldiers.
Now, Ginger Snaps is my favorite werewolf film of all time. Um, and Candace would probably say, "Well, that you're just biased because of Catherine Isabel being," but no, I actually truly do love Ginger Snaps. I love the relationship between Ginger and Bridget, her sister, and like going. It starts off like all these different like photos of like them like dying and stuff because that was like a part of their like school project, and like they're just obsessed with death and everything, and like they're the weirdos in school. It almost kind of reminds you of like The Craft with werewolves,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
but yeah, I love it.
Mayor says he was more scared by Albert Brooks and Twilight Zone. Oh, man.
But I seen Super Batman there. Are you sure that was Smooth Criminal?
Oh, I missed
Because
that.
I was thinking that was an alternate ending to the black and white video where he's on the car busting out the windows. Because the Smooth Criminal, I remember the Smooth Criminal video. It's a part of the Moonwalker movie that Michael Jackson did, where he's wearing like the white pinstripe suit and he has the Tommy gun. That's what I remember, but I could be wrong. I could be. It's been a long time since I've seen either of those videos, so maybe I'm missing something.
So, I think I talked a little bit about, some of my favorite John Landis films, and also me and Chris both answered Uncle Bill's question about whether that affected our enjoyment of John Landis films. And I think the fact that we both said no, it doesn't affect us in our enjoyment of the films because there are some times when you just have to separate the art from whatever decision someone may have made in their personal life. Now, I am not in any way, shape, or form condoning pedophilia or anything like that. I'm just saying that if somebody has been accused of something like that, as I believe was the Brian Peck case,
Yeah.
um, I Brian Peck has he has a guess sizable part in Return of the Living Dead, but there's so much more to that movie than just him. And I could never stop watching that movie just because Brian Peck has been accused of what he's been accused of. In fact, he directed the Willies, and I don't know, maybe CK and Uncle Bill can help me out with this because they did that Tragedies in Tinseltown.
Yeah.
Was he supposedly supposed to have messed with some of those kids on the Willies?
Well, we don't know that as
Oh,
of yet. I mean, nothing has come out about that.
gotcha.
But I mean, if you watch the Wheelies and and CK and Uncle Bill, they covered this on that episode they did of that. There's
Wes
a
says
scene,
it was not accused, he was convicted. So,
right? But there is a scene in the Wheelies where it shows like the kid, they got him like strung up in the bathroom, and there's like the hose is wrapped around him, and the
mhm,
hose comes down between his legs. It looks very suggestive.
mhm.
So, I'm of the belief that was put, knowing what I know now about Brian Peck, I feel like that was intentional, and it does make now going back to Uncle Bill's questions about um, oh, does it affect me watching other John Landis films based on what happened? And I use the analogy with Brian Peck on Return of the Living Dead.
Mhm,
Now, while it doesn't affect how I feel about the movie, I am bothered that he's a part of
mhm,
it. And knowing that he directed the Wheelies,
mhm.
that makes that movie harder for me because he's the one that was in control. You know, he
Mhm.
was the one in control of the wheelies, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for me to watch that than it does Return of the Living Dead.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, just if I don't know if you've seen that documentary yet, Quiet on Set, Dana, but
Yeah, I watched it with Steve.
it's it's a rough one to watch, and I
Very
know
disturbing.
Drake Bell has done several other interviews talking extensively about that stuff since the documentary came out because like he says in that documentary, that's it's the first time he's coming forward talking about any of that stuff. And this is a case where I might have I'll be on the fence a little bit with the John Landis thing, but
Mhm.
this is that situation with Brian Peck is where he's 100% at fault for everything.
Mhm.
And and going back to where was it, like 2013 or something like that, when a lot of this information was being put out about stuff regarding Brian Peck of all those accusations. But this guy, continues to get work. He's
Mhm.
been booked for conventions. He's got all this support from people, and why?
Mhm.
And this because that to me, when you are taking the innocence away from a child, I don't care if they're a teenager, they're still a child. You're taking that innocence away from them. That makes you one of the most horrific human beings to exist on this planet. Bottom
Yeah.
line.
Mhm. Yeah, adults should not be messing with children in any capacity. I mean, I think all of us are in agreement with that. I don't think there's anybody in here now that wouldn't agree with that statement. Um, but I do own. Unfortunately, I do own the Willies. It is in my collection on DVD.
Yeah, I have it too. I mean,
And I for years and before I even knew anything about this Brian Peck business, I always liked it as an anthology film. But I can guarantee the next time I do watch that movie, I'm gonna be thinking about this
yeah,
case.
that's what I meant by that too. Is like am I going to not watch it ever again? That's
Right.
probably not the case. I mean, I do like the movie for what it is. If you can separate that from what you know about Brian Pegg,
Mhm.
does it make it a little difficult for me to watch because that's the first thing that comes to my mind now? Yeah, it's difficult, but like I said, there are things about it that I still enjoy that doesn't really give off any kind of like innuendo or anything to me. I mean, there are some things there that I've noticed now looking back on it, but majority of the film is not like that, and there's really no like innuendos or like any kind of wink wink moments like, hey, Brian Peck, the director here is a pedophile, so you don't because you don't know, you don't realize it, but it's easy for you to think that now because of what we know.
Yeah, in hindsight.
And it's just the same thing with like Return of the Living Dead. Like I love that movie, but like I said, because he's a minor character, he never before I ever knew that stuff about him, I didn't even care about the Scuds character in the film. I mean, he was
Yeah.
just a guy they just kind of threw in there in the friend group, and I mean, he has a cool death scene. That's probably the best thing about his character in the whole movie, and you know,
Yeah.
um, but
He's
I'll leave it at that.
He's just there for me. He's just in the background. When I think of that movie, I think of Linnea Quigley's trash character. I think a lot of guys think about Linnea Quigley's trash character. And I think about Freddie and his girlfriend. And I think about all this the tar man and all, I think about the tar man busting out there and go brains. I mean, I think of the sheer audacity of some of the things in the film, the fun things in the film. I'm not focusing on that Scuzz character as Chris was talking about. um Wes, I'll actually have to go back, and I have not. I'll be honest, I have not watched that particular episode that y'all did, so I need to, just so I can be clear on things because I don't know a lot about that case. Mayor says the only artist I can't separate the art from the artist is Victor Salva. A lot of people have strong opinions on Victor Salva. Mayor says mainly because he molested the star of Clown House, and there's lots of things in his films that point to what he did. Um,
I've never seen Clown House, and honestly, don't really have any interest in
Either.
watching
Yeah, not really. It's not been on my radar to ever want to watch before or after the whole.
that was a pretty graphic stuff that happened. In terms of
Mhm.
what I know, I mean, I know the stories and stuff, and that's the extent of it that I know. Because, like I said, I've never seen the film, and honestly, I probably never will watch it at this point.
I'm trying to remember who directed the. I don't think it was Victor Salva that did Apt Pupil based on the Stephen King story.
Uh, no, I don't. Who is that? I don't. It's not Victor Salva. I don't think.
But I had heard there was an article on this a few years back, several years.
Brian Singer.
Bryan Singer, that he evidently did some maybe set up shots that were not appropriate. He had underage boys naked. That was the talk. I don't know if it was said that anybody was molested, but that definitely it was inappropriate to have underage boys naked on the set. Oh, Wes says Tragedies in Tinseltown Clown House is available too, so y'all can watch that one as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. He had to get that cheap plug in.
Uh, Batman says I've seen the opening few minutes and got bored with it and boosted it off. Um, Wes says we cover it all, boss. Clown House has some very fucked up shit included. I'm probably gonna stay. I'm gonna be like Chris. I think I'm just gonna stay away from Clown House. Um, Dirk, hey, he says, "What the hell? I just walk in one." Well, we are actually on the tail end of this Twilight Zone movie tragedy and legacy of Landis version of Apples and Oranges. Um, so, um, I guess we've talked about everything basically that I intended to talk about tonight, and I really think this is one for the books. This was a good one, guys and gals. And I want to thank Chris again for bringing up this as a possible topic for apples and oranges. And I'm glad that I didn't wuss out and decide not to do this. I'm glad that I did this. I'm in fact I'm proud that I did this. I think sometimes some of the best shows come out of something that we may have thought that we would be too uncomfortable to talk about. And I'm glad I did this. I'm glad I got my thoughts out there. I'm glad that you guys and gals in the chat got your thoughts out there. I'm glad Chris got his thoughts out there. I think that is very, very important for people to get their opinions out and for them to feel comfortable sharing those opinions with other people. And I think we made a success of this tonight. And it just goes to show that you can have a civil stream, even when you're talking about stuff that pushes a lot of people's buttons, basically.
Mhm.
Um, thank you, Batman. Batman says, great live, guys. Not a beating stick, Dirk. It was a talking stick. We had a virtual talking stick because I was envisioning that we would have more people live on screen, and I just didn't want people talking over each other or not letting somebody talk, somebody taking over the stream or anything like that. Um, thank you again, Batman. He said both of you guys had it well thought out. I give a lot of credit to Chris. I have to because Chris came here with his A game. And I think if he hadn't came with his A game, which Chris always comes with his A game, I have to say that if I didn't have someone on here that brought their A game, I think this would have failed miserably. And so I want to thank Chris for bringing his A game with him tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, Dana. I mean, like I said, like I was prepared for this one, and I was been prepared for it before. I even knew you were doing this
Hmm.
because like it's just like I said, it's something that I have thought about and had mixed feelings over for several years, ever since I first found out about it. Um, and when they released that Cursed Films episode of that, it it hit me hard even more than
Hmm.
what I was already feeling. Um, so you know, I learned a lot more when watching that episode,
Hmm.
and it kind of helped me develop my opinion of things and look at things a little bit differently than what I had already had been looking at them. Um, so because before that episode, like I knew about the events of it, and I wasn't sure how to feel because like it's all kind of like you said, hearsay.
Hmm.
Uh, but when they kind of get into a little bit of what they talk about, like the set designer and the thing goes into on the
Yeah.
cursive, um, and you could tell that that guy's being genuine, and
Yeah.
you feel that this has a really deep, you know, impact on his life
Hmm.
because after that he was pretty much done, and so it kind of helps develop how you feel about things when you hear these additional stories and things that you're learning about. Um, and I'm not going to lie, I was nervous to talk about that stuff tonight
I was too.
because it is a touchy subject with a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are still just look at everything in a negative light, and
Mm.
there's nothing positive to come out of it. But you know, I have a difference of opinion, and I think other people have difference of opinion on that. And regardless if we agree or disagree, it's all about respect around here. At least with me, I know with you, because I mean, people are going to, like I said before, people are going to disagree about so many things, so trivial things,
Mhm.
that doesn't really even matter. I mean, but like this situation, yeah, this matters. That's something that is very, deep that you can dive into, and there's a lot of details surrounding it. And if you don't have any kind of feeling towards that type of situation, you may be cold hearted. I don't know. Or maybe you just don't care. I don't know, but that's not for me to say. That's not for me to judge. Like I said, regardless of how you feel, what your opinion on this is, I want to respect it because I expect you to respect mine. So I should do the same for you.
Right. And I think, or I hope, I learned something. I'm sure Chris learned something through all this. And I hope everybody in the chat learned a little bit tonight. I hope that people that watched this on the replay that didn't get a chance to come in here tonight when it was live will get something out of it. In fact, even though this concerns very tragic events, I hope this becomes one of my more popular videos because I want people to watch it. I want not to necessarily hear me ramble on, but to hear Chris talk, to see what people put in the chat and all of that. I think that my stream or my creations are not historically important, but what my guests and what people in the chat say are historically important. I think that that needs to hang around for a while, for a lot of people to be able to watch.
And speaking of the chat, I really hate that Dirk joined us so late. I would have loved to had him join us and
Oh, yeah.
heard his take on all this because I really enjoy hearing Dirk talk about stuff like that. Especially when we did the apples and oranges last week with the Shining.
Yeah.
And that being his favorite movie of all time, I was, he actually taught me a few things that I didn't even know. So, like, yeah, I would love to heard his take on this.
Mhm. And, that's something else I am learning about. I knew you guys were smart. I know Chris is smart. I know Dirk is smart. Everybody in here is smart. And don't ever let anybody tell you different about that. Um, but y'all's knowledge, especially Chris, because he's been on here with me a lot lately. Like, for instance, Chris's knowledge has just blown my mind. It just astounds me, and it's not just his horror knowledge, it's his musical knowledge, and Candace the same way. Every time we do a Friday Foolish and Candace comes off with whatever, she just adds to it, whether it's music or movies or a book, or it doesn't matter what it is. She does it, Chris does it, everybody else that has been on the streams with me does it. They bring something to the table each and every time that is new to me. Some of the stuff I know, but every single time I learn something new. And I think that that is important as well. Not just for us to get in here and have discussions about things, but to learn from each other.
But I thank you for that, Dane. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you to say that. It's just I'm the type of person I wear my heart on my sleeve, so to say, and this stuff is a passion for me. It has been for a very long time. So I don't ever claim to be knowledgeable about things. That's not really even something I think about myself. It's just I just talk about what I know,
Hmm.
because it's I'm passionate about it, about horror, about movies in general, or wrestling, or anything regarding like Jim Henson, like the Muppets. That's another thing I'm passionate about. Just like I said, I don't ever claim to be knowledgeable about things. I just talk about what I know.
Hmm. Well, and that's the most important thing. Like, what writers are taught from an early age is to write about what you know. And I think some of our best writers do that. They put a little bit of themselves, like Stephen King, for instance, puts a little bit of himself in everything he writes.
Yeah,
And so, talking about what you know or writing about what you know, that's a very important path to success.
and I kind of and think about what I said. I mean, like just when I say I talk about what I know that means the same thing as being knowledgeable about something. But what I mean by that is that I don't claim to know everything. I guess I should have said. Um, but so I just kind of talk about what I do know about. And like if someone like Dana says, Chris is, very knowledgeable, so I I appreciate that. I really do. That's really kind of you or anybody that would say that, but it's just not something I've ever. I guess I'm not very
Well, that's because
about
you're a
myself.
humble person, Chris, and that's a good quality too.
I appreciate that.
Um, Dirk does say, "Thanks, Chris. I couldn't tonight, brother. Researching for a stream tomorrow on Chris C's channel."
Oh, okay, cool.
That is cool, and hopefully, maybe Dirk, we can have you on for another one of these apples and oranges at a later date.
Mhm.
Um, Batman, you say, "Hey Dana, if there was a particular movie discussion, would you consider changing the day of it to like a non-watch along, like Saturday or Sunday?" Now, are you saying would I change one of my watch alongs to just merely a movie discussion?
Yeah, I think that's what he's asking.
I mean, I would consider it. Is there a particular movie that you're thinking about?
Well,
Uh,
he would like to get on the original versus remake discussion of Dawn of the Dead.
okay.
That would be a good one. I mean, like, because while I do like both of those films, I'm obviously going to pick the original because it's my favorite horror film of all time.
Mhm.
And you know, but that's definitely a apples and oranges thing, because the remake is, while similar in some aspects from the original, it's really a completely different story.
Right.
So, I mean, a lot of times I just look at it as just a different movie, that's it's just they just happen to have the same title.
Right. Oh, okay. So I get what you're saying, Batman. So if there wasn't a watch along for the weekend, like I'm doing watch alongs every other weekend and a movie munchies every other weekend, I'm thinking what he's saying is, could I have a apples and oranges on a weekend? I wasn't doing a watch along.
Oh, okay.
Talk about the original versus the remake of Dawn of the Dead. Yes, I would definitely consider that, but give me a little bit of time, Batman, and because Steve's kind of gotten used to me doing the watch along every other weekend, and he'll say, "Oh God, Dana, you're going to do something on a weekend that." But me and Candace did a Sunday silly, on a weekend when I wasn't doing a watch along. So give me a little bit of time, and I'll try to work it into the schedule, Batman, and then I'll let you know when I'm planning on doing that, so you can come on.
I
Uh,
have a question.
let's see. Mayor says, so when are we going to have the most important debate? Once and for all, we need to know which is better, apples or oranges.
Oranges. For me, it is. I love oranges.
I love oranges, but if it was green apples versus oranges, I'd have to go with the green apples.
Yeah, as far as it was green apples were my, like the Granny Smith apples that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love them. Those are the best. Um,
Be specific, Mayor. Are we talking about red apples? Are we talking about red delicious? Are we talking about Granny Smith green apples here?
but speaking of oranges, Dana, and I know I'm always on here talking about food and stuff because
That's
I'm also passionate about food. People, it's important to me. But no, I actually bought these Totino's pizza rolls the other day, and they're probably the best like pizza rolls I've ever ate. They're orange chicken
oh,
flavor. Like it's got like orange chicken inside, the pizza rolls, and like they're the best pizza rolls I've ever had.
that sounds delicious, actually.
Yeah, if you've never seen them anywhere, if you do see them out somewhere, and you've never tried them, gosh, pick those up. They're if
Where
you like pizza rolls, but they're
were you at Walmart or where were you?
well, they may have them at Walmart, but there is a grocery store in our area called United Grocery Outlet, and we call it UGO for short. And that's where I got it. They have a lot of like discounted food in there that's not like it's not expired or anything. It's just they're just kind of like a discounted grocery store, which is I know it kind of sounds strange,
Mm,
but like I I think like a bag of the ones that if I would have got them at Walmart, they would have been about like $5 or something. I got them for $2 at Yugo. So and yeah, but I highly suggest people trying those because they're really good.
Candace says my favorite apples are Honey Crisp. I hadn't thought about Honey Crisp.
Yeah, that is her favorite. She's always talking about those
And Blissful says, I'm from New York. We are shunned if we don't choose apples over oranges.
because it's the Big Apple.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Um, well, guys and gals, I think we've had a great discussion once again. We've almost went on for 3 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes in. Um, Chris, is there anything that you want to bring up or anything that you want to promote or uh,
I mean, just like anybody that's already been checking out Death by Stereo podcast channel on YouTube or Spotify, highly appreciate that. Thank you guys for your support. And we're going to be put like I know we were a little bit late doing this because we were supposed to have a couple new episodes this past Friday, but we're trying to work to get those put out by this Friday, so we'll have double episodes for each series this coming Friday. That's both the Video Dead and the TerrorVision series we're doing. And I wanted to mention this because I seen this was announced today. Um, that they are going to be rebooting the Monsters again into a film called 1313. And I think it said that James Wan is attached to it. So it's going to be a darker take.
That might be interesting.
And so I'm interested to see how that develops. And I'm sure me and Candace will be talking about that as more information about that comes out on our TerrorVision series because we are covering the Monsters episodes right now, some of our favorite Monsters episodes. But like I said, thanks for everybody for the support they've given us so far. Help us get the word out there. Help let people know about our channel. I really appreciate it because we want to grow and continue to do this. And it's just really fun. Like I said, I've just only recently started doing the YouTube thing, and Dana's kind of helped me come out of my shell when it comes to that, and I appreciate her for that. I thank her, immensely for letting me come in here and do the shows with her.
It was a no-brainer, Chris. Like I've said before, I couldn't imagine having anybody else on here, that is willing to talk about all of this stuff that you've talked about with me. A lot of other people are like, that's okay, Dana, but I'm not really wanting to come on there and talk about that. Chris is like gung ho, unless there's something else going on that family wise or something, or Raw's on or something like that.
or we went and seen Judas Priest last.
Yeah, but that was a family thing,
Oh
and I
yeah, it was definitely because that was Noah's first concert, and I swear I haven't seen him like that excited over something in such a long time now. But it was special for us.
Hey, Mike, I'll just call you Mike. You got Mike's DVD and Blu-ray collection. He said, "Hey guys, I just subbed to your channel. If you're talking about my channel, I appreciate it. If you're talking about Candace and Chris's channel, that's awesome as
Yeah,
well."
I appreciate if it but like Dana's got a lot of if you're not familiar with Dana's channel, Mike, then she's got a lot of content, man, and she's a lot of great stuff. So yeah, and much as I say, help me and Candace get like the word out on our channel, also at the same time get the word out for Dana's channel. I mean, she puts out some really spectacular content, guys, and I'm not just saying that because she's one of my best friends. It's just bottom line the truth. So yeah, but thanks to everybody. I really appreciate that.
Um, so Blissful has put Mike's channel, his YouTube channel, in the chat. So be sure to check out Mike's
Oh,
channel.
absolutely. I will as soon as I get off of here.
Um, let's see, Batman, you say, because these apples and oranges discussions are fun, but I feel like Michael Jordan and Space Jam weighed and bound down with the smick job. Yeah, I understand that, Batman, and we'll do one of these on a weekend. I'm not doing a watch along. It will come up, and I will do the Dawn of the Dead one, and you will be one of the first to know about it.
We should do a watch along with Space Jam.
That would be interesting. I don't have a copy of that. I'd have to, find a copy of it. But um, what was it? Mayor said. Mayor said that's funny, Chris. When I stayed in Dayton for the Social D concert, my buddy got a bag of those pizza rolls, and he hated them.
He got what pizza rolls? Those ones I was talking
Like
about?
just the ones you were talking about.
Oh my gosh, what? They're amazing. But I know we all have different taste buds and palates and stuff. So, I get it.
He said that his friend said Totino's needs to stick to pizza rolls. But that's just boring, though.
You put chicken on pizzas.
Yeah, I used to make mini
Buffalo
chicken.
chicken.
I used to make mini chicken pizzas. I would take that Texas toast stuff, that frozen Texas toast, and I would put spaghetti sauce on there,
Hmm.
and I would cook some chicken and chicken seasoning. I would cut it up and put that on the pizzas, and then I would put. I used to get this stuff called Fiesta cheese. It was like a cheese blend,
Oh
and I
yeah,
would put that on top, and then I would cook them. And those things were awesome, and that was kind of just a concoction that I come up with myself.
that sounds really good.
And Steve ate them for a long time, and now I guess his taste buds have changed, and he doesn't like them anymore.
Have you seen these new things that Little Caesars has been advertising? They're called like pizza puffs or something like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
So
haven't tried them, though.
Candace makes her own. So
Oh,
like, and I think she uses like one of those like muffin trays that you put in the oven to make those. So with the ones at Little Caesars, I think it's just you can only get like pepperoni ones if I'm not mistaken. There might be one other one, but Candace puts whatever she wants. Like she makes them with like pepperoni, banana peppers, mushrooms, whatever you like on a pizza, and they're just as good, if not better, than the Little Caesar ones. So,
wow. I'm getting hungry, guys and gals. Candace says, I make pizzas with garlic bread, Dana. So good.
oh
Yeah,
yes, that's really
yeah.
good. She does. Candace has a lot of good ideas when it comes to food. Um,
She
we had
definitely does.
we had recently, because like we don't really have this type of food in our area, but me and Candace have like considered for several years opening up our own food truck business,
That would be awesome.
and we wanted, and it was her idea uh, to do Greek food because we don't have anything like that in this area, and me and her both love like Greek food, like euros and stuff like that. Um, and I feel like that would really do good as a business in our area. Um,
I think so.
when I went to FrankenCon, they had a Greek food truck there that I bought this Euro quesadilla, and
Mhm.
it was amazing. I mean, I've been thinking about that Euro quesadilla ever since I ate it at FrankenCon like 2 weeks ago.
Um, Victor, you want to know what the topic for Friday Foolish is this week? Me and Candace will be talking about, and Chris may pop in if he gets a chance. We're going to be talking about badass women in all genres of horror, not horror films, all genres of film. We did for Sunday Silly because we had to change from Friday to Sunday because of the Judas Priest concert, which was a great reason to have to reschedule it because I think Chris and Candace and Noah had a fantastic time at that concert. But so if you want to tune in, we will be talking about more badass women. It just won't be concentrated just on horror films. We're going to just blow it out and talk about all different kinds of films.
Yeah, and if I do show up on there with you guys on Friday, I mean, I'll go ahead and give a spoiler of one of the people I want to talk about. Because if we are covering, stuff that's outside of horror, and that's Pam Grier. Let me tell you something.
Yeah, Pam.
Pam Grier was badass, for
And
sure.
Pam Greer is a super nice lady if you meet her in person. Me and Steve
Yeah,
met
she was at a horror hound years ago, right?
I
And
think so. I think that
and I remember I was at that show, but like I never went to meet her, and I regret that so bad. Because I'll just be honest, and that's one of those situations where I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have prejudged what she was going to be like because I felt like she was going to be a bitch or something, and that's
mhm,
why I didn't go. But then I started hearing all these stories after the fact of how wonderful she was, how nice she was,
very
and
sweet.
I've been kicking myself ever since because I love Pam Grier. She's awesome.
And she, I got to tell this story real quick. Me and Steve, I wasn't even planning on really meeting her because not because I didn't like Pam Grier, but because Steve seemed he was just so excited. He wanted to meet Pam Grier, so I wanted him to have his limelight. But she saw me, and I was kind of standing back and allowing Steve to go up there and meet her and everything and get a
Mhm.
picture taken with her. And she was like, "No." She's like, "You get in the picture with us." And she said, "This is gonna be the Christmas card shot." And we took like 4 or 5 different like
That's so
outfit
awesome.
pictures. And I'll just never forget meeting Pam Grier. So if you've never met her and you get, a chance to, I'd say go for it. Definitely go for it.
Um, have you ever met Meg Foster, Dana?
No, no.
I tell you about a sweet lady is Meg Foster. She was absolutely awesome, and this ain't nothing to brag about because it wasn't really like a good. Well, it's not a good thing, is what I was talking about. But like, I made Meg Foster cry by the way I spoke of Jonathan Brandis,
Uh,
and that it really like touched her, and she gave me the biggest hug and a kiss on the cheek, and I guess she could tell that I was being genuine about it, and
mhm.
that's what you gotta be. When you meet these celebrities, that's my best advice is like just be yourself. Be genuine. Don't go to try to like talk to them just to please them. Just be real with them. Tell them how you feel about stuff, and
Yeah,
they appreciate that because they're everyday people just like us.
yeah. Yeah, that's very sound advice, Chris, and I would echo that because that's what I do or I try to do when I go up to meet anybody. It doesn't matter if this is one of my bucket list people to meet or not. I go up to these people and I just start talking. I just start having this conversation. And I'm sure Steve's standing in the background somewhere going, "Oh God, she's done it again." Um, but he did tell me one time that he said, "You always have an interesting story to say to these people." Like when we met Don Coscarelli, I went up to him and I said, "It's very nice to meet you, Mr. Coscarelli. I'm a big fan of your work." And then I proceeded to tell him how me and my dad had sat around and watched Phantasm movies. And Steve was like, "Dana, you always have a great story to tell him when you go up
I'm jealous of that because that's one I've not got to meet Don Coscarelli, but I'm hoping that they add him to Scarefest eventually this year because I know that they've already got some other fantastic. Reggie Bannister's going to be there. A. Michael Baldwin. Can't think of her name, but it's the chick that played Rocky in Phantasm 3. And
forgetting her name."
but it looks like they're kind of going with a bunch of different themes this year for Scarefest as far as like reunions are concerned.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm hoping that they get Don Coscarelli too, because I would really he's like the one I don't have. I don't think on my Phantasm poster because I've got Angus and Reggie and everybody else, but I need to add Don Coscarelli to that.
And
So
did you? I bet you did see who they've added to Horror Hound for September.
Heather Langenkamp
Heather Langenkamp, Amanda Wood,
and Ronnie
are like,
Blakely. See,
and
I called that a week ago, Dana, because when
right.
Monster Mania had them,
Yeah,
and
you
they were
did.
putting up the photo ops and everything. And
You
I
did.
said, I bet anything that they'll add them to the Horror Hound too.
Yeah,
Because they just had Robert England up,
yeah,
and they had on his picture on the website. It's like Nightmare on Elm Street 40th anniversary. I'm like,
yeah,
well, if they're going to put the 40th anniversary graphic on there, that means they're going to get more people from the movie.
yeah,
We've been doing this long enough, Dana. These conventions to figure out what these promoters are
yeah.
playing, and it's kind of you just kind of have to look into it deep like that. But it's really cool. I'm glad that they added all them like I thought they would.
Yeah.
Um, so, and if you go look at the detailed information on the Monster Mania site, you can
Mhm.
kind of get an idea of what it's going to cost at Horror Hound as well for you. Um, and that's a good thing about these conventions. if say you're going to one, but you look at one that happens a few months before the one you're going to, and
Right.
they got kind of the same guest list, you can kind of look at that site and compare of like what it may be when you meet them.
And that way it's not a shock.
But that doesn't always mean it's going to be the same, guys, because these prices do change from show to show. Because, and I'll use Michelle Bauer at FrankenCon for an example. She had just did Cinema Wasteland 2 weeks prior,
Yeah.
and for your own items, it was $20 each for an autograph for your items. Okay, when I get to FrankenCon, it's different. So she has a whole new different price list, and it's $40 per autograph, no matter what you got signed.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just kind of have to like, it's a guessing game pretty much, like when it comes to that stuff anymore.
Yeah, but we don't want anybody to have sticker shock, especially somebody that is new to conventions. They're liable to have some kind of brain explosion or something. They see some of these prices. I think those of us that have went to a lot of these conventions over the years, while we don't like the astronomical price change a lot of the times, we expect it though because we've seen it happen too many times.
Yeah.
Um, and so I may be broke after Horror Hound in September. Steve may divorce me because I go broke because I want to meet
Oh
Heather
no!
Camp,
If,
especially.
if he did that to you, then I might be having to pay Steve a visit.
Oh, I'm gonna say now. Don't divorce me, Steve, or Chris is gonna come and have a conversation with you.
Nah, Steve probably whipped my ass. He's seen too many kung fu movies.
Oh man,
He got samurai swords laying around, Dana. How do I compete with that?
he's got he's got swords over here. They were on my desk, and I said, "Look, Steve, I gotta have room on my desk for my shit. I don't have room for your samurai swords on you."
Yeah, and I just said that. I didn't know that he still had them. I just remember the time that we came to your guys' house, and I just
He's still
wanted to,
got.
he was showing me all of his stuff, and I was like, damn, he's got a lot of swords.
Yeah, don't piss Steve off, or you might get a samurai sword up your ass. Oh man. Bliss, will you say tell him it's all out of the bacon fund? Well, hopefully maybe the shop will take off a little bit more and maybe I'll have a little bit of extra money from that or something. Which by the way, that's a good segue into me putting my shop, for those of you that didn't know, that I have the Deadites on Deck horror shop at deaditesondeck.com, and you can go there and you can take a look at all the things that I have up for sale. On there, I have candles, I have blended teas, I have t-shirts, and booga booga bears, and there's more to come. I just got to get some more product out there.
Um, you know what you should do, Dana? You should get some of those like blank white masks, like they're kind of cheap. You can get like a bulk of them some places online, and you should just paint them up like the makeup that Tiny Tim has in Blood Harvest,
That would be
and,
awesome.
and sell those.
I would probably have to have somebody like Candace paint them because I'm not artistic that way.
Do
Uh,
your best. That's what I always tell myself because Candace's like, Chris, I know you can do art stuff too if you tried. I said, well, I could try, but I'm not going to get very far.
like Steve made these hockey masks, and I had him make me one like what did I have him make the part 4
Mm-hmm.
mask for me, and
Does,
Steve did a really
does
good
it
job.
have the slice at the top of the
Yeah,
mask?
yeah, I had him do that, and yeah, he did a really, really good job. He made one for himself, and he made one for me as well. So he could probably sell those if he wanted to. I know Wes sold the Creepy Hawks there for a while. You remember those, Chris?
Yeah, and I think Pizzelle was doing it too for a while.
That's right. Yeah.
Which, speaking of him, I actually seen him at FrankenCon a couple weeks ago. That was the first time I had seen him in years, probably like at least 10 years.
Did he have Jeremy with him? You know
He
the
didn't, but he did a video. It's on his channel too, like where he's talking about FrankenCon, and he was talking about because he got to meet Ken Segos that played Kincaid from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, and he was talking about how Jeremy loves Ken Segos, and so when he went to meet him, he was telling him about Jeremy, and Ken Segos said like call him, let's call him, and so he got to talk to Jeremy on the phone and like.
oh
But
wow.
Pizzelle was saying that he was regretting not bringing Jeremy because it was more of a suitable show that he could have brought Jeremy to because FrankenCon's really laid back. There's not a whole lot of people. It's not one of these big huge shows where you're like shoulder to shoulder with these crowds and stuff like Horror Hound. Which not saying that's a bad thing about horror. And it's good that they get a crowd like that because it means more success and more things that they can do in the future for the show. But I just end with Pizzelle's situation with Jeremy. I get it. Like I completely understand. And I was really hoping because I knew that he was coming to that show, so I
Uh,
was hoping Jeremy would have been with him.
yeah.
But he said
Jeremy
that
would have had a ball. I bet.
yeah, he picked up a bunch of stuff for him. And that was another thing that Ken Segos did. He like sent a bunch of signed stuff back to Jeremy. And I don't know. I don't think he even charged Pizzelle for that stuff. But he does say on that video he released that that would be a show that he would be returning to. And he said the next time they have one, he said he was going to bring Jeremy to it.
Mayor has a great name for those masks, Mervo masks.
Oh, Mass, that's awesome.
Oh man.
If
Uh,
only I liked the movie, Mayor.
But so anyway, I guess this is probably as good a time as any for us to tie everything up with a nice, neat little bow. Because me and Chris both do have work in the morning, and
Yeah,
I'm sure that many of you guys and gals have work. And if you're not working a job outside the home, I'm sure that there are duties that have to be taken care of. I know Blissful takes care of all things around the house. She takes care of her mom. And so that is just as important as those of us that have outside the home jobs.
Candace is going to be busy tomorrow putting that graduation stuff together for the
Yes,
boys.
will.
So I'm looking forward to that too because I know they're going to enjoy themselves.
Nobody better not ever insinuate that being a housewife is not a hard job because it is. It most certainly is. Don't ever tell me that, oh, so and so's just a housewife. I might go ballistic on you. I might have to get out the
It's a
first.
hard. From what I understand, I mean, I'm not put in that position, but from looking as an outsider, you know, it's not an easy job. There's a lot of responsibility. It could be a harder job, I'm sure, than most regular jobs you have. I feel like what Candace does and stuff because Candace does have like her kind of her own little personal like business and employment stuff that she does for herself to earn the income. So it's not just like she's just a housewife and she doesn't work or anything like that. But it is it's a hard job. She does a lot, and there's a lot of respect from my end for that.
And I respect you for respecting her in that role, because I watched my mom over the years, and my mom is the hardest working person you will ever meet in your entire life, and so is my dad. They are both hard working people.
Yeah, I feel the same way about my parents too. My dad is 69 years old and he's still working.
Yeah,
So
my dad's still out there, like he's retired from the job at the tile plant where he worked for years. But my dad never stops working. So his after retirement job is he goes around buying and selling stuff, and he absolutely loves it, and he makes a ton of money
I
too.
would love to do that too. That's what I want to do when I retire, Dana. My mom is retired now, and she's loving it. Like she's getting to do so much stuff that she never really had the time to do when she was working, and she's loving life right now. So I'm
That's
happy for
great.
her.
Candace says, "Thanks, Chris. You're a treasure." So I'm glad that she was listening whenever you said that about her. Um, so, with all that being said, I guess me and Chris will skedaddle on out of here for the night. But as always, um, but I want to say, Chris, thank you again for being on here with me.
Absolutely, Dana.
Um,
Anytime.
I wouldn't have wished for a better co-host on this stream tonight. I needed somebody with the stability that you had on here because it could have went really awry if I had had somebody with
Well,
a
you know me, Dana. I'm all about mutual respect on everything. So I mean, you're never going to have any kind of issue out of me.
oh no, I could never envision it. I would say, "Who are you and what did you do with my friend Chris?" If your personality was any other way. Hey, Ghost. Hey, buddy. Did you
He
have
doesn't.
a good birthday?
He ain't got sense enough to know where you're even coming from.
Yeah, he says, "What in the
He
world?"
probably hears you talking, but he ain't got sense enough to look at the screen.
Well, Reg, he's like, I think he's camera shy. I'll start talking about him. I'll say, "Look at it. Look at the camera, Reggie." And he'll go, and he'll just get down. So, anyway, on that note, I want to remind everybody to be kind to one another and blaze that trail. And remember, there's a t shirt coming with that tagline on it.
I'll get one, Dana, for sure.
Everybody should get one. We should all wear these shirts. I'll make Steve wear a shirt like that. He wore the I Love Robert England shirt. If you haven't watched those commercials I did for the shop, check out all three of those commercials, especially the second and third one where Steve and I are doing our little shtick on there. So, um, thank you, Candace. Candace says, "Good stream, guys." Um, yes, and I echo Candace. Have a great night, all. And on that note, we're out of here and we'll see everybody next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.